Uh,
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast where we talk about all things from the solo years, and of course, we talk about things from the Beatle years as well. And we have got a packed episode tonight. As you can see, we are joined by not one but two special guests, and we have a very good reason for that because we are talking about the 40th anniversary. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around this, that it is the 40th anniversary of the release of Give My Regards to Broad Street. We've talked about the soundtrack already, but tonight we are going to talk about the film. And looking forward to that discussion tonight. In addition, we are giving you, which I believe is an exclusive, maybe first, sneak preview of Ringo's upcoming country album. So we are very excited about it. We have two guests that are experts in both of these things. So to get going on our show, let me just give brief introductions to ourselves tonight and also longer introductions to our special guests. So I'm Kit O'Toole. I am I am the host of Talk More Talk, one of the hosts. And I am the author of Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours to the Beatles, Lesser Known Tracks, Michael Jackson FAQ, as well as the co-editor of Fandom in the Beatles. I am also the co-host of the podcast Toppermost of the Poppermost. With me, as always, are my good friends and co-hosts, Ken Michaels, mainstay of the Beatles community, who co-hosts the incredibly popular podcast Things We Said Today. He is the host of the syndicated radio show Every Little Thing and is the host of the equally popular YouTube channel Ken Michaels Radio. Ken, are you excited about tonight's show?
I couldn't be more excited, especially with the two guests that we have. And I have only one thing to say. Zippity doo dah, zip.
Nicely played, sir. Nicely played. We also have, of course, he is the host of the very popular YouTube channel, Mean Mr. Mayo. He also has a second channel devoted to his other passion besides the Beatles, which is film, and it's called Mr. Cinemayo. Uh, show your love for Joe Mayo. Hello, Joe.
Hi, thank you, Kit. Hello, Tom. Hello, Kenneth. And hello, special guests. I'm just reading the way it
I
says
gotta change that.
it.
Joseph.
Kenneth Michaels.
Yeah, I should have introduced you as Kenneth. I didn't. And last but definitely not least, he is the co host of another very popular video cast and podcast, Two Legs, along with our friend Andy Nichols. So say hello, show your love to Tom Hunyadi. Tom, are you pumped about this show tonight?
As pumped as any McCartney fan can be. Yes, I am. And hello, Kit. Hello, Joe, Ken, Ed, Dylan. And all I got to ask you guys is, you guys don't think Harry would go and do a thing like that, do you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Same.
Listen, I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't ask me if I was pumped up for the show.
I can just tell. I know you are, Joe. You're always pumped for these. I don't even need to ask. All right, and now on to our special guest. Um, what first is a returning guest to our show. You know him as the number one expert on Give My Regards to Broad Street. Collects memorabilia about concerning the movie and the soundtrack. You know him by his channel, Call Me Mr. Broadstreet, and we know him by Ed Crawford. Hello, Ed. Welcome back to Talk More Talk.
Hey, good to see everybody, and hope I could just go according to script tonight.
All right.
Incorporate, but we'll have time later. But
Yeah.
good to
all
see
two, all,
everybody.
all 2 pages, right? All
You
two
know,
pages.
maybe a couple more. We'll see. We'll see.
Rachel.
And also joining us tonight for a very special reason. Now, he has been on our show before, but as I think it was a Wreck Our Brain show, but this is his first official appearance on our show. So this is kind of a really official debut. He is a musician based out of Nashville, currently plays drums in a group called the Minks. Their most recent record is called Creatures of Culture, which came out last year. You've seen him, though, on many of our other shows. You've seen him on Two Legs. And in fact, he composed the theme music for the show,
Yes, he is.
which is
Yes.
very cool. He also co-hosts the Discovering Dylan podcast on the YouTube channel Tastes Like Music. And he leads us through the discography of Bob Dylan, which is really great. That's a podcast that is very much needed to take us through. It's such a huge discography, so it's wonderful to have that. And I have to read this part because I love this. He's extremely charming and attractive. At least that's what his grandmother tells him. And he's excited to be making his proper debut on Talk More Talk. So welcome, Dylan Sevey. Dylan, great to finally have you on an official episode of Talk More Talk.
It is so great to be here. Thank you for that introduction, which you so clearly wrote by yourself, Kit. It means a lot to me. I'm so happy to be here. I know that we'd been talking about doing it for a while. I said, I'm gonna be not such a bad boy anymore and keep putting them off. We're finally gonna make this happen, and here we are.
Even though you have no values, I know.
None at all. No values at all.
You're
Yeah.
thinking of all the songs.
It's going to be one of those nights, folks.
Don't worry. We'll all be having Eleanor's dreams later on here.
That's right. That's
Right.
right.
Like who are we even doing this for? It's for no one at the end of the day.
That's
It's for
right.
us.
It's just my crowd.
That's right. That's right. Should have had a drum for rim shots. All right. So before
That's
we
what she said.
yeah.
No,
Hey. All right. So before we get to our two main topics for tonight, Ken, give us the latest news.
There's just way too much, but I'll try to read it as quickly as I can.
All right.
Obviously, and we'll be talking about this in detail with Dylan. The big news of the past couple of weeks is that Ringo announced his new country album to be called Look Up, which will be released January 10th. There's 11 songs on the album, 9 of which were written or co-written by T-Bone Burnett, who produced the album. And one of the songs was made available online called Time on My Hands, which we'll talk about. He has several guest stars on the album, including Billy Strings, Molly Tuttle, the sister duo Larkin Poe, another female duo Lucius, and on the last song, Alison Krauss. That song is called Thankful. Ringo co-wrote the song with Bruce Sugar. He has one song called You Want Some, written by Billy Swan, of I Can Help fame. Kind of ironic that he's working with Billy Swan here, since Ringo recorded I Can Help for an album that never was released, the one that he did with Chips Moment in Memphis. So we'll get to talk about that in just a few moments with Dylan. A very big surprise in the news is that the CEO for the Beatles' Apple Corps, Jeff Jones, is stepping down from his position. He has led the company since 2007 to the present. He oversaw such projects as making the Beatles' music available digitally on iTunes, the Beatles' Love, Cirque du Soleil show, the documentary 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years, all the archival Beatles box sets, the Get Back documentary, and he's listed as the executive producer for the upcoming Beatles 64 documentary directed by Martin Scorsese. Big surprise to hear this. We don't know the details why this has happened. We talked about this a little bit on Things We Said Today. I certainly hope it's not for health reasons, but hopefully soon we'll find out who his replacement is. And actually, we don't know exactly when he'll be leaving. It could be in a month. It could be sometime next year.
Yeah. I'm hoping that that this doesn't affect any future physical
Yeah,
media
I was
releases.
thinking the same
Yeah.
thing
You know,
because he was very good with that. I thought compared to how it had been before he
with
got
Neil,
there with
yeah,
Neil Aspinall.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, we were talking on the Two Legs podcast the other day, me and
yeah.
Andy Beatley Tone all about this. And when Neil Aspinall ran the company, he had a very protective attitude towards the Beatles catalog. He didn't
Hmm.
want anything that was considered below par to come out, like outtakes and stuff like that. Though it's a wonder that the Beatles anthology music came out when
Right.
when he was running the company.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. This is probably Beatty Tone's fault for his video that he made. You know,
Yeah.
does Apple know what they're doing? I mean, one look
Oh,
at that, and how do you not just say, you know what, it's over, I'm done.
Been a hot minute since I did a show with Tom. I'm happy to see that he's still so quick to just place the blame on one of his friends and peers at the drop of a hat.
Boy, jealousy sometimes, I tell you.
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Also, we should make mention that what just became available online is take 8 of the exquisite Be Here Now from Living in a Material World. I can't say enough about it. It's so absolutely gorgeous as a recording and love Nicky Hopkins' piano playing on it. You know, I'm not going to say anything bad about the release version all these years. I've learned to love it. It's just nice to hear a different take altogether. Any of you want to comment?
Beautiful,
Beautiful.
just like you said. We were
Yep.
talking about it a little bit
Uh,
before we
Mhm.
got on it. Well, take 8, and then there's
And then there's the
the
remix.
remastered one is what really
right.
what
Right.
we were talking about. No,
Yeah.
it's I love it. I love outtakes, and I think it's great,
Yep.
terrific, beautiful
The outtake is beautiful, and the remix. Oh my gosh.
remix.
The
Yeah,
remix is stunning. As
Yeah.
we were saying beforehand, I mean, you feel like you're just immersed in it. The clarity of it, the new instrumentation that you notice, George's voice brought up a bit more in the mix. Stunning, absolutely stunning.
it's not like it was
It
before.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It just gets me more excited. It just gets me more excited for this release.
Me
It's
too.
even better.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there'll be a new appreciation for this album,
Yeah.
which I think is a masterpiece. Paul McCartney's company, MPL, have announced that 5 more SHMCDs are coming out from his catalog on the 6th of
Mm.
December. The albums are the archive editions with bonus tracks, and they are for Venus and Mars, Wings at the Speed of Sound, Wings Over America, Thrillington, and Wings Greatest.
Wait, did you say with bonus tracks?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like the more recent.
Okay, because I've got the first batch and there are no bonus tracks
I
on
thought when I
these.
was on with Two Legs with
Uh,
Andy, he said that there would be.
Really? Uh, well, I hope so. Because I haven't read the fine print or anything like that. So if there are, that's great.
Okay, well, we'll see. You'll have to
Yeah,
give us the
yeah,
rundown.
yeah.
Okay. Also, guitarist Andy Timmons. I don't know if you've heard of him. He recently recorded a cover of the rare Beatles song I'm in Love, and he recorded it at Abbey Road Studios. John Lennon wrote the song, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas recorded it and didn't feel their recording was good enough to release, and it sat in the vaults for many years, their version, until he released it on the best of Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. And after that, John gave the song to another Liverpool group in Brian Epstein's stable, that being the Foremost. This was their follow-up to another song that John gave to them, Hello Little Girl. I'm in Love was a top 20 hit for them in the UK. And Andy Timmons' video for I'm in Love, you can see him at Abbey Road Studios playing not only guitar, but the bass, piano, and drums. Contributing backing vocals on the record is Matt Bissonette, the brother of Greg. The Andy Timmons Band, you might recall, released an entire album covering the Sgt. Pepper album, and that was in 2011. You can actually hear an interview I did with Andy at the time, which is on my website. The new record company, the record company, Ace, will be releasing a compilation called Here, There, and Everywhere. Black America sings John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison. It's coming out on November the 29th. Ace has already issued 2 previous compilations of black artists covering the Beatles, and this is now their third one, and this time they've included some solo music being covered. Some of the solo songs that might surprise you would be Isn't It a Pity by the Three Degrees. Remember the Three Degrees? When Will I
Three.
See You Again?
Yes, indeed.
We've talked about Let 'Em In by Billy Paul. That's on here. Give Peace a Chance by Randy Crawford. Jealous Guy by Donny Hathaway. Every Night by the Drifters. And in a touch of irony, get this, the Chiffons, the very same group that recorded He's So Fine that led to the whole lawsuit covering My Sweet Lord.
No, I was gonna say that for a joke.
No, it's the truth.
Wow.
This
Wow.
collection will be made available on CD, 2 LP set, and a rough trade exclusive red and blue vinyl. Thanks to Scott O'Rourke for that information.
I have to pick that
So
up.
you're saying this is the third release of this
They,
series?
they put out these albums of black artists covering the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I got you now. All right.
Track this
And
down.
also from our Badfinger guy, Tom Brennan, we
Okay.
learn of another Ivy's release. This is called How Much Is the Sky, coming out November the 15th. It'll be on CD and vinyl. You can pre-order it now for downloads only on Amazon Music and Apple Music. This is a new album of demos from the Ivies. It's on Y&T Music, the same company that gave us all the recent Pete Ham and Tom Evans demos and the Pete Ham tribute called Shine On. There's 18 rare demos and a 16-page booklet. These are recorded 1967 to 69, plus a limited edition pressing of 300 copies signed by original member Ron Griffiths. Okay. Um, I just want to make mention of a few things. This coming week, actually, it's Wednesday, the premiere of Midas Man, which will be streaming on Amazon Prime Video, the documentary on Brian Epstein. November 5th, Session Man. That's a new documentary on Nicky Hopkins, which will also be on Amazon Prime and other platforms. Also, just a few concerts here I want to make mention of. The George Harrison tribute, and it's also known as Harry Fest, takes place this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday, November 1st and 2nd, at White's of Westport, Massachusetts. They've been doing this now for 20 years. There are local artists performing George's music, plus Beatles, Beatles related stuff, raffles, there's trivia, and the money from this actually goes to charities. It's been for cancer charities in the past. And I will be there on the Saturday, just hanging out with the crowd. If you're there, please stop by, chew the fat with me on the Beatles. Again, that's this Friday and Saturday, the George Harrison tribute, also known as Harry Fest. If you want more information, there's a Facebook page for it, GH Tribute/Harry Fest. David Spinoza, who was a great guest on our show, along with Kenny Asher, he announced on our show that he's doing a show called Spin the Beatles Big Band. And this is at the Cutting Room in New York City. That'll be on November the 17th at 4 p.m. At first it was 1 p.m., it was moved to 4 p.m. And Kenny Asher, who was on the show with David, is in the band with him. This is a 17-piece orchestra. They do big band arrangements of Beatles songs. And if you want to find out more or get tickets, go to thecuttingroomnyc.com. One last thing, a good friend of mine, Mike Strito, who's a big Beatle fan, passed away in July, the end of July. He spent most of his adult life being in Beatles tribute bands, and the last tribute band he was in was called the Hofners. At the end of July, he gave a concert, did a meet and greet with the fans, and on the way back home with the band, went to sleep in the back seat and didn't wake up. And so there's a tribute concert for Mike, and it's called the Hofner's Last Concert. It's going to happen at the Old Stone Church in East Haven on December the 14th at 7:30. I should be there for that. And if you want more information about that, you can go to oldstonechurch97 at gmail.com. If you're in the New England area, you probably know about Mike because he's been in so many different Beatle bands. Really great guy, played the drums, was known as Mike Ringo Strito. And so if you want to see their last concert of the Hofners, go to that email for information. oldstonechurch97@gmail.com.
The
That
Old
should do
Stone
it.
the Old Stone Church is a great venue. Yeah, can't highly recommend that place enough. Sorry for the loss of your friend, Ken.
Yep.
Um,
Great guy, very knowledgeable on the Beatles.
Yeah, I saw a lot about his passing on Facebook. He sure had a lot of friends and a lot of fans. So,
I went to his wake, and you would have thought the entire town of East Haven was there. Because they all knew.
wow.
People in
Wow.
East Haven seem to all know each other.
My gosh. Oh
That's
boy.
a New England thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ken. All right. Well, let's we will move on to the first part of our show, which is very exciting, which is that Dylan had an opportunity to get a sneak peek listening to Ringo's upcoming country album, and he has very graciously offered to tell us about it and give us a little preview into what we can expect out of this album. So Dylan, why don't you first tell us how did this happen? How did you get to listen to the album?
I'm still asking myself that to some degree. So basically, what happened was I work at a store down here in Nashville called Vinyl Tap, and it's half record store,
Very
half
good.
bar.
Great
Um,
name.
and we do answer the phone by saying, "This is Vinyl Tap,"
Of
for
course.
anyone out there wondering. Um, and so normally my Tuesday shift, I work from 2:30 p.m. to 11. And one day I came in and my boss said, "Hey, how would you feel about coming in at 5 next Tuesday instead of 2:30?" And I thought, I mean, if you're asking me to make less money, then I don't particularly like it. But if there's something else you have in mind, then sure, I'm all ears. And basically, his connection, obviously every record company has their distributors from different record labels and whatnot. And whoever he knew from Universal had invited him to this super secret listening event to the new T-Bone Burnett produced Ringo Starr album, which, certainly there were, reports earlier this year that Ringo was working on a another full-length album after initially announcing 5 years ago that he wasn't going to be doing that. But I hadn't heard the T-Bone connection yet, and I had a dream either back in 2020 or 2021 that Ringo had done a record with T-Bone. T-Bone is one of my favorite producers ever. I'm not sure if anyone else in this particular show is familiar with the record he produced for Robert Plant and Alison Krauss back in
Hmm.
2007,
Yep.
Raising Sand.
Yeah.
Just a phenomenal album. And he's done great work with Elvis Costello. He was in Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review back in the 70s. Really phenomenal career and discography. And my boss was like, to be 100% honest, my knowledge of and interest in Ringo's solo career is not a even a percentage of my employee Dylan. So if there's a way for me to get him in instead, then I would like to do that. And I said, yeah, I you could probably twist my arm into going and doing something like that, I suppose, especially because it had been advertised to me as, oh, well, you're going to go and you're going to listen to the album with Ringo and T-Bone. And of course, that initially sent me spiraling into thinking, well, if I'm in a room with Ringo and I get to meet him, I mean, what do you say? Like, hey, Ringo, nice to meet you. I, in my head, have all 20 of your studio albums ranked from worst to best. If it's okay with you, I'd like to start with the worst. Um, but in my opinion, um, but I was like, well, at the very least, I'm going to get to hear Ringo's new album, which, so this was on Tuesday, October 15th. And then the album was eventually announced that Friday, the 18th. So we were all getting together to listen to this record before it was even public knowledge. I think literally earlier that day was the first post he had made on Instagram with the cowboy hat,
Oh,
Wow.
and of course, and appropriately for the show that we're on, I think everyone is well aware of Ringo's second solo album, Buku's a Blues from 1970. And I mean, I think it's been talked about for probably decades at this point. Hey, that country record that Ringo made wasn't half bad, actually. And he's dipped his toe, throughout the years here and there. You've got Crying on Rhoda Gravure, and you've got So Wrong for So Long
so long.
on
Yep.
Give More
Yeah.
Love, and so on and so forth. And going back to the Beatles days, Ringo's always done country well. And I remember, one of you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that So Wrong for So Long was initially supposed to be the first song of a country record that he was planning back at the time in 2017. And I think it eventually just evolved into a normal kind of Ringo solo album.
Yeah, that's what he had said.
Yeah. But for years, lots of hardcore Ringo fans and solo Beatles fans have been saying, "Where's Buku's Buku's Volume 2, Electric Boogaloo? When are we getting this?" And it seemed like holy crap, that's finally happening. So um, I got to go. I was sent this ticket through the mail, and was led down this little back alleyway into this very intimate room in like the basement of some hotel in Nashville. And I walk in, and immediately there at the door is T-Bone Burnett. And I'm like, all right, well,
Wow.
yeah, that's what we're doing today, I guess. And then even stranger was, I looked there, there were a bunch of couches and ferns. It was really bougie. I'll see if I think I took a photo or two. I'll see if I can pull it up here on my phone. But I looked down at one of the couches and I said, that's definitely Jamie Lee Curtis. But then my mind started playing tricks on me because well, hold up. She doesn't live here in Nashville, and to my knowledge, there's no greater connection between her and Ringo, or her and T-Bone. So clearly it's just someone who looks strikingly like Jamie Lee Curtis. And then, of course, someone went over to her and said, "Oh, this is so and so." And she said, "Oh, hi, I'm Jamie Curtis." And I said, "Okay, fine, this is happening, I guess." Um, no sign of Ringo. I figured, I did see a big bus outside. I said, okay, he's probably waiting on the bus, and he'll come in and say something later. So we sat down, and actually, a guy sat down next to me, and I don't know if anyone here has ever read the book The Business Wisdom of the Beatles by Richard Courtney, or if anyone has
I
heard
know
of
of it.
it.
I know
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
So it's funny. Richard was there, and
Mhm.
we started talking, and I mentioned, oh yeah, I've done some work for the show Two Legs, and I've talked with Ken Michaels a few times. He said, "Oh, Ken Mike of Every Little Thing and
Yeah.
and the shows." And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh yeah, I lived in New York for years and blah, blah, blah." So actually, Ken, I need to send you his email. I was just reminded in this moment that I need to
Ooh.
do that. Um, so I'm sitting down on this couch, and I was severely underdressed for the occasion. I was definitely just wearing my Miles Davis t-shirt while everyone else was wearing their nice little blazers and everything.
He had the
Uh,
coolness factor, so that's
well,
good.
I did. And then I also looked around and I said, no other of these jokers have strong opinions on Postcards from Paradise. I'm the only guy, these are a bunch of record company bigwig execs. They're here because they're paid to be here, and it is what it is. Like I'm a real fan, and I
Darn right.
deserve to be here even if I'm severely underdressed. Yeah, I don't know how well this is going to show up, but it was a very very intimate room. Yeah, it's not showing up very very well, but
Yeah.
there we go. You can
Yeah, it's a
kind of
small
see,
room.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
lots of candles and ferns and beautiful stuff. And And so they kicked it off right on time. And, going into it, I don't know what my expectations were because on one hand, I've mentioned, both on Ken's show and I'm sure on Tom's show before that, I have my issues with a lot of Ringo's solo output really dating back to when he stopped working with Mark Hudson. Certainly, there are more than a few songs and everything since then that I still really love, and I've listened to it and given it all a chance. But I had reached a point where I was having a difficult time, really knowing what to expect. Although I thought Crooked Boy from earlier this year was the best thing he had done in about 20 years. And I thought, honestly, and with all due respect to all the fantastic people that Ringo has worked with, I think working with someone like Linda Perry and someone of her stature, to me personally, it felt like the first time that somebody was pushing him in a direction, both production wise, songwriting wise, performance wise, in a way that I thought really worked across the board for the entirety of the record. And so that had me excited. And the other thing that had me excited was simply knowing that T-Bone Burnett was behind it. And, T-Bone is not going to put his name on something that he's not going to be damn proud of, and for good reason. And then when I sat down and saw at the table that we had these nice little pieces of paper with the track listing on it, um, and I'm seeing featuring Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and Larkin Poe and Alison Krauss, I again didn't know anything about this. That made the expectations go up. I'm going to be very, you know, very very frank. It's 13 days later, and I only had the privilege to listen to this album once. So I'm
Understood.
I'm not going to be able to go through every song and be able to recall absolutely everything.
Oh, no, understood. I mean, just giving us an idea of what
But
to
what
expect.
I can tell you guys is that you have a lot to look forward to. And I think regardless, for everyone here on this show right now and for everybody watching this show, regardless of what your opinions are on Ringo's recent music, whether you've been all about it, whether you've been more hesitant about it, I think this is going to probably have the most overwhelmingly positive response from the Beatles fan community of any Ringo solo record in quite a while. And I can say that with confidence because for the entirety of these 11 songs, I could not wipe the smile off my face. And I'm sure that there were multiple people in that room kind of looking at me like, uh, like, who's this guy? Jesus. Who likes Ringo this much?
Yeah.
And I said, there are dozens of us. Dozens.
Yeah. If
You
Ringo was
know,
there, he would have started counting. One, two.
yeah. No, and I'm being somewhat facetious, but but even Ringo will make the jokes about it at his all-star concerts over the last however many years, where he'll say, "How many of you bought my new album?" And I'll go three,
Yeah.
four, yeah. You know, I think that Ringo's reputation has been very very unfairly um, been brought about, frankly, I think by people viewing him as a novelty, which I couldn't disagree with more. I think that there are, some people who view him as a novelty, and because of that, oh, everything he does is great because it's Ringo and he's so cute, and they're not treating it on the same way that they would treat any other artist. But then there are people who think, oh, well, it's Ringo, and he's not the singer that the other Beatles were, and he's not the songwriter, so it's all disposable. And I think Ringo has had a solo career for going on 55 years. He deserves to be valued as much as any artist out there. I'm personally offended when I hear people, talk about him like he's just this novelty not to be taken seriously. Um, which, quite frankly, I occasionally, I don't want to say he's brought it on himself, but I think we've all acknowledged, like, all right, buddy, how many lyrical takes on peace and love are we gonna have here on any, even when the music is good or the melody is good, uh, you know, these last few records, man, I would love to hear something a little bit different, on a lyrical angle. Um, but man, I'm smiling just think about it. This record sounds fantastic. And again, T-Bone, incredible producer. And what I really liked about this record is that it felt like it really bridged the gap between a true T-Bone Burnett production while still feeling like a Ringo album. The drums are front and center, and that is clearly Ringo, not even just on the drums, but Ringo on his drums. You know the sound of that snare drum when you hear it. You know the sound of those toms, and you know the sound of the guy who's playing them. So to hear the drums up front and center with this really wonderfully organic soundscape, uh, it's just fantastic. It sounds right at home. Now, I will say to give everyone a good, I don't want to use the word expectation because I think expectations are just predetermined disappointments. But this is not Buku's Blues Volume 2. Buku's Blues is a very classic Nashville country record. Your 50s, 60s, early 70s Nashville record. This album is very much in the Americana realm, very clearly. Lots of elements of country and folk and the blues, but it is not your typical. This isn't going to sit alongside your Waylon Jennings or your Merle Haggard records. It's also not modern pop country by any means.
Thank God.
It yeah, yes, please. Everyone can take a deep breath. There are no Jason Aldean or Morgan Wallen guests on this record, thankfully. This is real, legitimate Americana, produced by a master of the genre and performed by a true lover of the genre. We all know how much Ringo respects it. And the musicianship on this record is fantastic. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Billy Strings, but
I've heard of them.
oh man, Billy is. I would use the word that people normally use to describe him, but I don't know if we're allowed to use curse words on this show. Um,
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would say.
People in a very positive way would say he's an MFer.
Yeah, there you
He
go.
he is.
I gotcha.
You know, a lot of folks in the jam community, the jam band community, kind of look at him as, at first it was Trey Anastasio of Fish who was the next Jerry, and now Billy is very much the next Jerry. His
Gotcha.
playing is incredible. There's a 3-track sequence on this record. Come Back, Can You Hear Me Call, and Rosetta. Billy Strings' guitar performance on Rosetta, I will state it on record now, is the single coolest musical moment in Ringo's discography since Instant Amnesia 21 years ago.
Wow.
And I was gonna say Time from Why Not, which the musicianship on Time is unbelievable. And I think this even surpasses it. And this track features Billy on guitar and Larkin Poe, who an incredible Americana act. If anyone here is not familiar with Larkin Poe, please familiarize yourself. Their vocals with Billy's guitar, it is simply unreal. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing at certain points because, again, even with Crooked Boy earlier this year, which I thoroughly enjoyed, I just have had this expectation in my head. I know what the other EPs sound like, and I know what What's My Name sounds like, and I know Postcards from Paradise and Give More Love and Ringo 2012. And not even just the songs, but simply from an auditory standpoint, what they sound like. And this is not that. And I mean that in
So
a
you liked
very,
it.
I
That's what you
really,
say. So you liked it.
Okay.
Okay.
Ring.
Just oh, go ahead.
No, please, you
Oh
go.
no, I was just going to say, what about Ringo's voice? Because there's always, I hear auto tune and blah blah blah. How did you think Ringo sounded
I,
vocally?
I think Ringo sounds pretty strong on it.
Hmm.
To my ears, I I was picking up on probably still a bit of tuning, but it was not as distracting or noticeable to me as it's been at other recent points in his career. And people throw around the word auto tune without knowing what it really means sometimes. There are multiple different types of vocal tuning. Auto tune can be used truly as an effect, like Ringo used on his cover of Money on What's My Name, where very clearly this is here to create some sort of effect, whether you like it or not. But it's there, it's share on Believe, it's so on and so forth. And then there are times where it is used because there was not a pitch perfect vocal take that they wanted to make pitch perfect. There's, I think, some vocal processing, but I do think that it sounds a lot closer to Ringo's authentic voice. I was gonna say than we've heard in some time, but I also thought his voice sounded great on Crooked Boy, and I like on both of these releases, on Crooked Boy and this album coming up, I like that you actually can tell Ringo's age a little bit. Because Ringo still sounds very good, but I think there have been times in the past where they've mixed his vocals a bit low. I don't know
Right.
if they were trying
Yeah.
to hide something. The guy is 84 years old, and I don't think there's any shame in sounding 84 years old, and he's still hitting the notes. His voice has that classic Ringo husky quality we've come to know. And, I thought there were moments on McCartney 3 where I felt very similarly, where I thought that Paul being a lot more vulnerable with his voice really, really worked. And I felt that way on this record.
Mhm.
Um, Overall, top to bottom, really solid record. I wouldn't say every single track is a knockout. Again, I've only heard them all once. I can't go on, too much about any of them in detail, but there's a lot for you guys and for everyone watching or listening to this to look forward to. This is an unbelievably strong set of songs, clearly made with a lot of people who cared about this project. And I'll talk about it in a second. There was a Q&A afterwards where they all talked about what this album meant to them, and you can
Mm.
feel the love that was put into this record.
It
Wow.
I know the pedal steel is featured heavily in the first single. Is there more of that in the album?
Yep, there's pedal steel, there's other dobros and resonator guitars. There's
Mm.
some nice harmonica work. I remember on a couple songs, some really solid violin and fiddle playing. Molly Tuttle, who I've met a few times here in town, she's another incredible singer-songwriter, and she is a monster guitarist, banjo player. Some of her banjo work on this record, and she was present for this Q&A, and you could just tell like how out of her mind she was. Like, I can't believe I'm sitting here right now talking about the Ringo Starr record that I contributed to. I mean, uh, it's you could tell everyone involved felt very blessed to be a part of it.
Can I ask, with all these other musicians that were a part of the album, were there any duets or was everything solo? Well, the Alison Krauss is a duet, right?
I wouldn't categorize it as a duet. I mean, her voice is very present in the choruses, but I'd say they're not trading off vocals on that song or anything. She's singing a harmony to what Ringo is singing.
Kind
Okay.
of
Um,
like with Walk with You in a
um,
way, or no?
I wouldn't even say that. Really more so just she's mirroring exactly what she's singing at the same time. Like she's not trailing what he's singing or
Huh.
doing a call and response thing. It's right along with him.
Okay.
However, Can You Hear Me Call is a duet with Molly Tuttle where they do go back and forth a little bit. It sounds great. They also were talking about how proud they were that for the first time in Ringo's solo career on album that he was finally doing a duet, and I was there on the couch going,
Uh,
well, I'd be talking all the time on Buku's Blues was a duet. But
Yeah.
I knew my place.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go, actually,
Yeah.
T-Bone.
No.
Yeah, I didn't do
Write
that.
one for me. Have you heard that
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't hang
Come,
up.
yeah, come
Yeah.
on. Has
Yeah.
everyone forgotten the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Uh,
But but that one is the main duet. And but other than that, the vocal features are more so your standard background vocals, but they are present. You know, Billy sings on quite a few songs. Molly sings, I think, on three or four. Larkin Poe, Lucius, who is an unbelievable duo. They sing on Come Back. And Come Back was the song. So Ringo was initially planning to do another EP. He reached out to T-Bone and he said, "Hey, write me a song for my next EP." And so T-Bone wrote him Come Back, and Ringo did his parts. T-Bone produced the rest of it, and that was the song that made Ringo say, "I think there's something here, and I think we need to do something a bit more." And I think from there it elevated, and there will be interviews that come out with them, so they'll this will either be confirmed or correct me if I'm slightly wrong, but I think what they said was they said, okay, let's do a full country EP. T-Bone, write me 4 or 5 songs. T-Bone flew to his house and said, all right, I brought you 9 and played them all of them. And Ringo said, well, I mean, if you've got this many, then let's go. Thankful, I believe, is the only song, the closing track, that T-Bone didn't write or co-write, and that was originally going to be a part of another EP. But then they were putting it all together, and Ringo said, "Well, hey, I really like this song. Can we put it on the album? Can we make it all fit?" And it works, and it really works. And Thankful is the one song, of course, where we delve into some peace and love imagery in the lyrics because of Ringo's involvement. But I will say, hearing that in one song at the end of an album was a lot more palatable for me than hearing, okay, track 1 about peace and love, track 2 about love and peace, and track 3 about peace and love, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
No bio type songs in this.
Nothing to nothing like the Liverpool trilogy
Yeah.
or anything like that. I'm sure there's a bit of truth, but I'll need to wait till we have the actual credits. But I don't think that Ringo contributed to the lyrics other than Thankful. They were mostly talking about it as if they were written by T-Bone and Daniel Tashin, who is the co-producer and engineer on the record, whose father, Barry Tashin, was in a band called The Remains, who
right.
opened for the Beatles on their 1966 tour. So that was a cool moment. Daniel was there and he talked about it. He said a cool little full circle moment for him as well.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool
Fantastic.
stuff.
Can you say
Uh,
anything about how Billy Swan got involved with this album?
Billy Strings.
No,
Oh, Billy Swan. I
Oh,
can,
I thought you were misread. No, I don't know if I heard the Billy Swan aspect to this.
yeah. He wrote a song called "You Want Some."
Oh, yep, that's on it. Yeah, on this sheet we don't have the songwriting
Oh,
credits,
okay.
just the actual tech. I
Mhm.
didn't know that Billy Swan wrote it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there's another song that Billy wrote with T-Bone Burnett, "I Live for Your Love."
Yep, and that's another one that features Molly Tuttle as well, and their voices work really, really well together. That's cool. I didn't know that Billy was so. So you do have the songwriting credits here, or do you just have
Yeah,
those
I do.
two?
I have all the songwriting credits.
So does Ringo contribute to anything other than Thankful?
As a songwriter, no.
Okay, I didn't think so. Um,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, really, really solid songs, um, and it was cool. It was cool to gauge the room's reaction because, again, I think there were very few people there who were as helplessly nerdy as I am. Um, I think if you played the average person, look at the average person. If sorry, I'm on Talk More Talk. Am I supposed to not do that?
No, no,
Uh,
we're all nerds here.
um, I think if you played the average person, a Ringo album, without much, background into it, I think depending on the album, you'd get, various reactions from it. But it was really cool to see, and hear because there were multiple times where I was closing my eyes and a really cool moment would happen and I could hear someone in the back corner of the room going, "Oh, nice." People were really tuning into it and people weren't treating it as this cute little thing, the way that some people tend to treat
Yeah.
Ringo. Like people, and I think that is a credit to having T-Bone attached. T-Bone's name carries a lot of clout, and I'm really happy for multiple reasons that Ringo got on my wavelength with the dream that I had 3 or 4 years ago, um, and reached out to him. You know, I think this is going to do a lot of wonders. If not for him commercially, I think from a critical and reputable standpoint, this is going to do a lot of necessary wonders for Ringo, and I'm very
Cool.
happy about that.
Well,
Wow. That's
I think
fantastic.
what we all really want to know is did your boss give you a paid day off for this?
I did still go into work later that day, well, because they were expecting it again. It was advertised to me, go listen to the album with Ringo and T-Bone. So while we're listening to the album, I'm occasionally looking around and I still don't see Ringo. And then eventually at the end of the record, T-Bone and Daniel and Molly sat down and someone from the Country Music Hall of Fame was there, sort of like a mediator. And it turns out Ringo was present via Zoom.
Uh,
On the TV
Okay.
okay.
behind him. I think there may have been an initial plan for him to come to Nashville, but I think it ultimately ended up being easier. And yeah, I don't know what the timeline is of when the canceled shows were due to him getting sick.
Mm,
But I also just wouldn't be surprised if he's continuing to lay low and rest up and make sure he's getting as healthy as he can. And to be honest, I was I was certainly excited at the idea of nervously, I don't know if he's still not shaking hands, but maybe
yep.
just, elbow bumping him or something. But
Sure.
there was a sense of relief when I saw the screen, like, oh, good, I don't need to accidentally make an ass out of myself today. So, so that's good. That's good. That's good. Um,
Awesome.
Oh, that's
but
wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there was like a live Q&A, and man, Ringo, he is still just as sharp as a tack, man. He is still so funny, and he is still so quick, and you just wouldn't ever guess. I feel like when people hear 84, listen, I remember what my grandparents were like at 74, let alone 84. And just what you might think of in your head when you hear that number, it's like this guy is so full of life still and humor. And, there were a
Yeah.
couple moments where he was giving an answer and he paused for a second and the mediator started saying something else and he said, "Hold up. I'm not done yet." He was really staying on top of him, and uh you could tell how proud of the record he was. And he was very forthright about everything. He he was like, I really truly thought I was done making albums. I had been having fun making these EPs. That was good enough for me. I like to do what my buddy John did, write something and put it out as soon as I can. Um, but he, just seemed so invigorated by the whole process. And I'm so happy that he didn't allow himself to, stay in that little box that he made for himself. Because he could have just said, no, I said I'd do this, so that's what I'm gonna do. He followed his gut, and you can tell how proud he is of it. He was so gracious to T-Bone and to all the guests on the record. It's frankly, even seeing certain interviews and reading certain interviews of his for some other more recent records, this is the most excited I'd seen him in quite a while, and that was really
Wow.
cool to see it happening in real time, especially.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What a wonderful opportunity you had to get to be part of this event and hear the record. And boy, after hearing you talk about it, I'm even more excited. I'm sure all of you
Yes.
feel the same way to hear this. I mean, what wonderful. And thank you for coming here and letting us giving us a preview of this. Now I'm really excited and thank you, Dylan, for sharing all of this with us, and really, and we will definitely have you back on the show. This will not be your only visit here. You will
Well, I
definitely
would
be back.
certainly I'd love to come back on, when the album's officially out, and
Sure.
and
Yeah.
certainly talk
Yeah.
about it more. The one thing I'll leave you on before I got to get to my rehearsal,
Mhm.
and for anyone watching this in the Nashville area, the I guess the only plugs that I have to give are
Sure.
that my band, the Minks, are actually playing at my place of work, Vinyl Tap. We have a nice little stage in there. We are playing there every Sunday, the month of November, and we're going to have some local vendors, some local food, some drink specials. So if you want to come out and hear some free live rock and roll music, then you should certainly come out to that. And also exciting, this Halloween, should you be in Nashville, I lead Nashville's premier Weird Al Yankovic tribute band.
Nice.
We are we are
Nice.
we are called Weird Pals,
Hmm.
and we are playing at a venue called the Five Spot. And I would say the best compliment that we normally get is, "Wow, that was so much better than it had to be." Um, which is always a great compliment. I've had multiple people come out to the show who said, I didn't expect to love that as much as I did. So see
Fabulous.
that. But the one thing I'll leave you with, because I know you were all wondering, I did get to meet Jamie Lee Curtis
Oh.
in lieu of meeting Ringo.
Hmm.
And I told her, that as a kid whose father let him start watching
Trading places.
horror film. No, my
Oh,
dad was letting me watch slasher films way before any child should be allowed to watch slasher films, which probably explains a lot about me. Um, at least my personality and not the bodies in my basement. But are we recording still?
Yeah.
Um, I
It's all
I
on
told
tape, buddy.
but I
yeah.
told her, look, Halloween, was one of the first horror movies that I just lost my mind over, and she couldn't have been nice. She gave me the biggest hug. And I said, and the first date I ever went on when I was 12 years old with my middle school girlfriend was to see Freaky Friday in theaters. And she said, we just made another one, me and Lindsay. And I said, I know, I can't believe I'm talking to you about it. And I
Oh,
told
that's sweet.
and I told her how much I loved her yogurt. And no, I didn't say that. Uh, I did not
Good
say that.
stuff. That's awesome. Dylan, send me all the stuff of links and everything for your appearances, and I'll put them in the description.
I will. Thank you guys for having me on. It's
Uh,
been a hot minute since I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of you. It's good to see all your
Absolutely.
faces
Thank
again.
you, Dylan. Thank you for telling us all about the album, and definitely we will have you back on
Of
very
course. I
soon.
I'm so sorry, Ed. It's not personal. I would stick around if I didn't have a rehearsal. It's,
That's
it's up there
no problem.
with Shawshank and Cuckoo's Nest, in terms of cinematic masterpieces. So,
No, I
I'll
just,
throw that out there.
this is just such an education, just hearing all this and being there on the scenes. No, I believe me, amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Amazing.
I will be tuning in as soon as this is up to catch everything I'm missing here. But thank you guys again. It's so great to see all your
Thank you
faces.
so
Thank you.
much.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
thanks,
guys.
Dylan
buddy.
Sevey,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah,
Of course.
All
yeah.
right. Thank you. All right. Wow. I am just wow. I'm like, I can't wait for that album now. I think I speak for everybody here that I'm just super excited to hear what this sounds like. It sounds like it was an incredible experience being at that listening party.
Mm, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Well, now we go on to part two of our show, which is celebrating, as I said, I'm still kind of in shock that it's the 40th anniversary of this film because I think we all remember when that movie first came out. I mean, and can you believe 40 years have gone by? I can't believe it.
Mm.
And so we are going to talk a bit about that, about the film, and about its legacy, its impact on Paul's career, that kind of thing, and what we think about the film. But before we get to that, Ed, you've been patiently waiting to share this stuff. Although that was pretty exciting.
Well, yeah, as I said, just seeing that. I mean, it's a masterclass in being in a listening room. I've never really had that type of experience.
Hmm.
Listening to an album and really even with the
Yeah.
principal players,
Yep.
would love that. I mean, I am putting that in my car after hearing that. You know what?
Broad Street
That's it. Yeah, Broad
already.
Street too. I'm working on Broad Street too.
That's
Yeah.
right, exactly. So, Ed, you brought along a couple of pieces from your extensive memorabilia collection to show us to kick off this discussion. So why don't you kick this off by showing us what are a couple
Yeah,
of
well,
your prize pieces?
just two items. Well, again, for those that didn't catch the last time we did the album and stuff, but I've got the crew jacket right here.
There you go. Yep.
So this was off of Tracks UK.
Mhm.
Basically, seeing that, I was like, okay, I definitely have to have that. I've got a copy of the script, as Tom likes to joke. It is 2 pages, maybe four. Maybe we could go with 4 pages, but got a lot of good stuff in it. But it doesn't have the lyrics to "No More Lonely Nights." That was one of the last things recorded, so it's not
Mm,
actually this particular.
right.
Just very nice to have. Not too many of these lying around with MPL. Something I just opened today. I'm going to give a shout out to from Japan. I hope I'm saying your name right if you're watching, but Hiromi Yamaguchi, I believe of either Nagoya or Aichi, Japan. I'm not quite sure which, but it's the Japanese version of the book right here. It's actually got a
Mm,
couple cool photos as I was just kind of thumbing through a little bit ago. Like it's got the set design right there. Silly Love Songs, Tom's favorite sequence of all time. Uh, Look at the time, I know, but no, kind of looking at that. I mean, just looking at other things as well. See if I can just pull up another one real quick. So I was looking through. Here we go with uh, oh Harry and the tapes. I don't know if the camera's picking that up too well,
oh
but
yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
got it.
Yep, we see it.
yep. There we go. Trying to be careful because I mean this thing is about 40 years old as well. And I mean this is just a partial bit of the collection because I mean if honestly if I had to go through every single item, we would be here for the next 6 hours, and I know I have to work, so I know other folks have to work too. So, but
We'll be here till
that's why I
Boxing
have the
Day.
channel. Yeah, I
Understood.
know. That's why I have the channel, just being able to share memorabilia and stuff like
Good
that.
one, Joe.
Mhm.
I didn't catch that.
Sorry, only once.
Only once.
There's a line of, isn't there
I'm
a
sure. I'm
line
sure
of,
it was
if this carries on, will something about we'll be here till
Be
Boxing
here
Day.
till Boxing Day.
Boxing
Boxing Day.
Day.
We could be here till Boxing Day. But yeah, but that's why
I
doing the channel and stuff
know.
like that and focusing on. I know, of course. So yeah, with the film itself, I mean, wherever you think you want to start with the
Yeah.
film.
And by the way, if you want to see more memorabilia, be sure to follow Ed on his channel. Call me Mr. Broadstreet. He shows a number of other items. I mean, this is just a tiny sample of what he has.
Just a
Uh,
sample. Just a sample.
just a sample, that's right. So on his channel, so be sure to follow him. All right, so let's start out. I think we probably all have different stories of how we first experienced the movie. Because for me, I did not see it in the theater. I saw it, and I'm sure Tom, you may have a similar story. I saw it on VHS. Because I was not into the Beatles when this first came out. This was I didn't start getting into them till like 85, something like that. So I was a bit late to the party on this. But Joe and Ken, did you guys see it in the theater? Let's start with Ken. How about
I
you?
most definitely did. I wish I could remember the theater though. But I
Mm-hmm.
did see it in the theaters and I did see it with Rupert with
Mm-hmm.
the animated short first. And I just remember at the time it was already getting bad reviews. And I went into it thinking, well, go into it with an open mind, even though I love, most of what the Beatles have done. And I pretty much enjoyed it. Looking back on it now, I can see the criticism and where, why people were critical of this film. Um, but I looked at it as being kind of similar in a way to like with Beatle movies or especially Magical Mystery Tour, where there's really not much of a plot, but it's a string of music videos with dialogue in between.
Mm-hmm.
And just from the performances alone, I really enjoyed the film. And I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it even more now from that perspective. I remember when the album first came out and I heard these versions of sorry, Beatles songs, and Paul's voice wasn't as strong to me as it used to be. Now I
Mm-hmm.
listen to it and I think his voice was fantastic on
Mm-hmm.
the album. Um, and in the film. So, you had all these different music sequences, and they're all great in their own way, although Silly Love Songs is kind of weird. But I do like, watching all of them, and the acting was okay. I'm far more critical of that part now than I was then. And the first time it's like, this is great. We're going to see Paul on screen. Ringo's on there too.
Uh-huh.
Linda and Barbara are in there too. But, if anything, when I watch it now, it's kind of like, well, most of the other actors were kind of wasted in the film.
Yeah.
And
We'll
they
get
didn't
to
have
that.
too many lines,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
So, but initially I really enjoyed it,
Mm-hmm.
seeing Paul on the big screen, especially seeing the bands that he had there with Dave Edmunds and Chris Spedding, and then Eric Stewart was in. I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. There was a lot to enjoy from the music point of view. Never thought it was the greatest script in the world, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's not a hard day's night, but still has a lot going for it.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, Joe, what was your first experience with
Well, I
film?
did see it in the movie theater probably the night it came out. I usually have a much better recollection for just about everything. I could tell you what it was like when I did something or when it was. I do remember the theater. I remember it not being very well attended
Mhm.
uh for the first night. It wasn't a large audience. I can't remember this time though. Everything I felt about it is what I was leading up to. On this one example, I can't remember. I just remember it was an underwhelming experience, but I knew that I was prepared going in that I might feel like that because, as Kenneth said, I'd already gotten wind of the negativity about it in the news reports, some of the reviews. It wasn't a good vibe, so I didn't expect much. Don't remember much about it that first view. I think subsequently when I started getting it on home video and watched it a lot more times on whether it was VHS or DVD now, um, which I hope we talk about that it needs a better release, home
Mhm.
video release.
We'll get there.
Um,
Yeah.
then I became a little more acquainted with it. But without going into all the details right now, it just it was just kind of there,
Mhm.
you know.
So
And
weren't super excited about it.
I know, I wasn't at the first time, and I'll throw this in, even though that doesn't really have that much to do with it, but to me, it's important. I had been going through something personally at that time for a month standing, and then it would last another 4 years. So I
Mhm.
wasn't, I wasn't doing well at the
So
time, and that kind of colored a lot of my feeling about it. Every time I think of
yeah.
that movie, I remember those days in a kind of grim way. But then again, at the time, I thought maybe it was just me and how what I'm going through. But
Yeah.
no, it's kind of gray and grim,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Regardless,
Yeah.
not talking about the music, talking about
The
the film itself
film
as a
itself.
movie.
Yeah,
Mm.
understood, understood. Tom, you're kind of like me that, since we're about the same age. So how did you, first experience the
Right.
film?
Well, I mean, experience it with the first experience was with the No More Lonely Nights video, right?
Yeah,
Because you
me
did see
too.
clips, in the video, and then there was a few sound bites in the soundtrack which I had too. So it's funny too because listening to the soundtrack, for years before getting to see the movie,
Me too.
when you hear the guy going, I know.
Yeah.
I always thought that was Ringo because to me it sounds like Ringo
That's
saying
me.
that line.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then finally seeing the movie, I was like, really? It's kind of like a little let down a little bit by that. But then yeah, later on when the with the and I think it was because when we were talking with Ed the other night about this, I was trying to remember when I did first see it, and I couldn't remember if it was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, but it was definitely, I know it was definitely VHS, and I did have it in the late 90s. So I did buy it, and yeah, it had to have been in the late 90s where I finally actually got to see the movie. I don't know why I waited so long, but there it was. I mean, I watched it, and at first it is cool, like Ken said. I mean, it is like an extended video, right? And it's only like literally later on when after a couple viewings where maybe you kind of realize, okay, well, this isn't it's definitely not Ben-Hur or Citizen Kane, but we can get more of that later. But yeah, it was definitely in the later 90s when I finally got to see the movie.
Okay, and that's a good point. That is the same with me.
Mm.
That yeah, I had the soundtrack first, and yeah, when I
Right.
finally saw the movie, I was in the bits of dialogue, and I'm like, oh, I remember
Right.
that.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Especially the end of the medley that Paul sings, and you
Right.
hear, "Better be one of those days."
Yeah.
Hey, yep.
You know,
Yep. That's right. That's
you
right.
see Ringo,
Yeah.
trip over
Yeah.
the set.
Now, Ed, what drew you to the movie? What got you so, you know,
Ah,
interested
oh.
in it? I'm sure you've told this story a bunch of times,
I
but for
probably
those
have,
who
but
haven't heard
but
it,
just sort of, it's sort of a roundabout. It goes in a roundabout way. So
hmm
it's being fellow Gen X with Kit and Tom, so roughly
hmm
around the same age, of course. Okay,
yep,
No More Lonely Nights on video, MTV. Seeing bits about them giving the car away for the MTV commercial, which
Yep.
I
yep,
still love. I could give a bit of trivia about that a bit later on. But seeing that, and then I didn't get to see it in theaters. So we forward to about the summer of 1985. My dad had it on VHS. As way back in the day, you just get something from the mom and pop video store, copy it, return it,
yep.
and your own little
Hmm.
video. So watched a little bit of that. Didn't I don't remember watching quite the whole thing. Kind of being intrigued, and then that sort of shelved through. Go a little further in the timeline. What makes me go back around a little bit is first rock concert for me, July 4th, 1990, RFK Stadium, seeing Paul McCartney. Now, this is where I become a fanatic, where I go all in. Fast forward a little bit later, the 1996 video release, Tom, that you're referring to. So, really seeing, going, okay, revisiting it and going, wow, okay. I remember when the DVD came out in 2004, being really excited, kind of literally doing a countdown on a Beatles website to like this many days, now this many days, way back when, no Google, nothing like that.
Hmm.
So then, especially getting it, on DVD, and yeah, I do agree, it needs a much better upgrade, and we can definitely get to that. So just seeing it over and over and over again, and I think it just reminds me, I know Joe, you said it was much maybe more difficult things for you going through. For me, I think it was also part of it being a very happy period in my life. I'm 8 or 9 years old, not too much of a care in the world. So that's a little bit of a nostalgia factor for me mixed into everything else. So that's about the most roundabout way. And then just sort of discovering, okay, well, now where all this memorabilia is coming through, I'm like, I really enjoy this film. Just starting to reach out and go, well, okay, there's the storybook, there's the LP, of course, the CD, everything. The deeper I go into the rabbit hole, suddenly I'm getting the jacket, the crew glass I've reviewed, something else I'll be reviewing next week. My most recent video from today with the Broad Street autograph. It's amazing how much it intersects music and movies, and those are kind of two of my favorite things, probably with a lot of folks, and just how much, not just memorabilia, but publicity and kind of fascinating from the fact of, it was hoped it would be a very commercial success. It wasn't. I mean, I could take the fan glasses off as well and see 1.5 million opening weekend versus a $9 million budget. That's not quite a profit, but that's, roundabout way, this is kind of how I just started really getting into it and really doing a deep dive into the whole thing.
Absolutely. So interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned it. At it that did I kind of just realized too that yeah, this is kind of a Gen X show tonight. Three three against two. Yeah. Anyway, this is odd. Yeah, this is very unusual for this show.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just an aside. Anyway, um, so let's get into the film itself. And we're not going to just sit here and just pull it apart and that kind of thing. So okay, yeah, just got the script out.
Might.
Yeah. So let's. But I mean, we're gonna do pros and cons and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So let's go into, are there parts of the film that you thought were strong? Were there parts that you look back and think, yeah, there were parts that I enjoyed. And those who are watching right now and those who are watching the replay, feel free to put in the comments. There are parts of the film that you liked. And so let's see. So Ken, let's start with you. Were there parts of it that you liked?
Yeah, well, definitely all the music segments.
Hmm.
And I love the fact that there's all this different variety. You've got Paul at the BBC doing Beatles songs with an orchestra behind him. You've got him with a rock band, in a warehouse there. You've got the whole silly love songs scene. I don't understand what that was all about. It's so different from everything else that's in the film. I really love most of all the Eleanor's Dream scene. It's very Charles Dickens to me. And as a matter of fact, in watching the movie recently, there's a scene in the whole Eleanor's Dream sequence where Harry is in like this alleyway and Big Bob is
Mhm.
also there, and they both have dogs with them. And one of those dogs, I think it's the one that Harry has, reminds me of in the movie Oliver, Bullseye.
Mm.
And Bullseye is a bull terrier, and that's what this dog looked like. So it made me think again of Charles Dickens. It had that kind of feel to it. And I love the whole, you know, Paul and Linda and Ringo and Barbara in the rowboat together. Um, and everything else that made it look like it was from a Charles Dickens film right there. Um, it's mainly it's those things. I like the scene with Sir Ralph Richardson, only because, it's towards the end of his life. Unfortunately, he only had a short scene, but that was fine. Nice to put it there towards the end of the movie. Um, yeah, all that stuff. I kind of like Paul's acting in it, even though I felt like he was trying too much to be casual, to be normal. But I kind of feel like Paul came across better than Ringo did. Ringo sounded like he was really reading his lines sometimes to me. But those would be among my favorite moments. Um, but it's mainly for the music that I love this film. There's some I don't really know if this was done intentionally, but when Paul looks back and he has that conversation with Harry, where Harry's telling him he's leading a clean life now and everything, he says, "I'm not a bad boy."
I remember, yeah.
And I'm thinking, he missed such in there.
Yeah.
It's like, is that done on purpose there?
Yeah, I wondered
Little
that
things
too.
like that that they sneak in. Um, some things I don't understand, like when you have the bands in the warehouse, why is it you have the band with Dave Edmunds and Chris Spedding, then they leave, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden
I know.
it shows up, and then
Yeah.
he leaves, and then, and
Yeah,
then you go
that's
back to Dave Edmunds and Chris Spedding. Why did Eric Stewart have to leave? Why
Well,
did he leave? You
I
know,
just realized this is that Spedding does stay for So Bad. He's credited as a backing vocalist on that, and you do see him in the background
okay.
oh,
staying. But to your point, yeah, it makes no sense to do the one song, leave, do the ballad, and then the rockers come back and do and then do the second rocker. It's just really weird in my opinion.
Yeah, but I still love those, especially Not
Mm,
Such a Bad Boy and No Values.
oh yeah.
Those two
right.
songs are killer rockers. And when I watch
Right.
something like this, I'm thinking to
Yeah.
myself, as much as I love all the lineups of Wings, and I do, the 89-90 tour, the 93 band he's had this century, who wouldn't want to see Paul McCartney tour with Dave Edmunds and Chris Spedding and Eric Stewart
Yeah.
and Linda
Absolutely.
and Ringo?
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
so I really love when they're in the warehouse doing those songs. I kind of wish
Mhm.
there was more of that.
Yep.
Um, those would be among my favorites, but then there are faults of the film, which I
Yep.
guess we'll talk about later.
Yep. Oh yes, we'll get to that. All right, Tom, how about you? Were there any particular points where you thought, oh, this is
Yeah.
a decent part of the film?
I mean, I think we all can agree that the music sequences are the best aspect of the film. It's well, most of them anyways. I mean, we can debate, with whether all of them are good or not.
Mhm.
But there is that little, the dream inside of the dream sequence where Paul's doing yesterday, he's
Mhm.
I always like that. Linda is beautiful when she's dressed up and she's on the horse,
Yeah.
and it's, and I just love that image of her in there. But to be honest with you, and Ken, you talk about Eleanor's dream, and I, was hoping that would come up. But I respect what he was trying to do. I really do. But I think it's just overly long, and it's telling us what we already, we've already established that he's already thought about Harry stealing taste, because then we see him thinking about Harry selling the boot the tapes to the bootlegger Giant Haystacks, so I think part of it is kind of like it's repeating itself, and we already know that. But like I said, the wardrobe is fantastic, the makeup,
Hmm.
and it's cool to see the whole thing, because we do see that most of that segment, or not most of it, but a good chunk of that segment in the No More Lonely Nights video, and so it's kind of cool to see the whole thing. And I do respect Eleanor's Dream. I know it's not a lot of people's favorite, but I do respect it. um, but other than that, and then yeah, and then the scene with Ralph Richardson, and he is credited as Jim, so you got to figure that he is more of a father figure
Right.
type, in the film. So that is a nice little scene. Unfortunately, I do think that's his final acting credit, right, Ed?
Well, if it, yeah,
Yes.
certainly one of them. It the last?
It was the last he had done. Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan. Earlier in 1984 is when that film came out, but this was actually the last he had filmed. So this is the last thing he actually had done on
Yeah.
film, and that
Yeah,
comes out later since he passed 1983, I believe, if I'm correct.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that is a nice little segment. Obviously, we hear "Goodnight Princess" in the background, which is a nice little touch too. But other than that, and over the last 8 years since I've been doing the other show, it's just like I feel like I've seen this movie more than anybody should be seeing this movie. And I just come to, now it's just like, nitpicking at certain things as I've become, a real, film snob in my older years. But again, it's McCartney. We want it to be great. Um, and unfortunately, it's not great, but the music segments are fantastic. For the most part.
Mm-hmm.
This is like Tom's personal Clockwork Orange. We'll just have the eyes open.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh,
had to
man.
put that in there.
Right.
Oh my God. Joe, what about you?
Okay, probably my favorite sequence in the movie is the warehouse uh, concert rehearsal. But it's not really a movie scene. These are just like videos, music videos, performances. I don't think of it as a movie, motion picture, with a story or anything. But I like what Tom was saying, the music bits, or most of them anyway, not all of them, because I'll get to
Right.
those later. But I do like the warehouse the best with not such a bad boy and no values and so forth. That's my favorite. And so bad. I like that the best, but nobody's really discussed the medley. I don't think sequence. I like the medley sequence with all the songs that it done there yesterday and here, there, and everywhere. Wanderlust.
Mhm.
The little bit of joking with Ringo looking for his brushes, and
Yeah.
as Ken said earlier, at the end, Ringo knocks over the,
Right.
whatever he knocks over, the symbols or whatever he knocks over. Paul's joking around saying, "Looks like going to be one of those days." A little bit of
Right.
comedy that works there. So I like that whole bit with the two of them. Uh, Also, the ballroom dancing
Yeah.
sequence
Yep.
I think is
Yep.
good. It's good choreographed number. I mean, I'm not going to say it's one of the Fred Astaire movies or anything, but and Ginger Rogers, but it's a nice moment. One of my favorite sequences in there. I like that version of the song ballroom dancing. In addition to all of the choreographed scenes and a fight that breaks out and all this stuff. The Sir Ralph Richardson stuff is good, but it's a little short, But I think when Paul and him are meeting up at the end, I kind of like that little bit. I'm really hard pressed to find other sequences that I really,
Yeah.
really like in this. I mean, I'll be dying to talk about some that I don't, but maybe the silly love song sequence I can take, even the ridiculous outfits that they're wearing. Maybe I could take the silly love songs, but I'll just throw in that I can't take the break dancer or whatever that is going across the screen. Uh, that's a little hint of one of the things I don't like.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned ballroom dancing because I would say that's probably my number one favorite sequence in the whole
Yeah.
film. I really like that. I thought um just the choreography, love the scene of, the particularly, I mean, it's so stupid, but when the Billy Idol lookalike
Yeah,
is on the is on the stage, and or maybe it's the woman that he was dancing with, and they're trying to kind of I guess all the ballroom dancers are kind of pushing at the stage, and they're trying to push them back, and they all kind of fall back like bowling ball pins, and I
hmm
mean, it's just
hmm
it's silly, but it's kind of fun. I mean, that's probably my number one favorite segment of the whole film, and great song, obviously, and I like the version. I like that version. The remix. It's not dramatically different than the original, but yeah, I'd say that's my number one favorite segment in the whole thing. Yep,
There's an
absolutely.
extra verse at the end.
yeah,
Yes, there
Um,
is. There is,
You know
and
what's interesting about the medley that Joe was talking about? At
mhm.
that time, Ringo had said he didn't want to drum on
didn't want
Beatles.
to.
Right.
Right.
and
So it
that's
just so
why he's looking for
happens
the brushes.
he
Yep.
doesn't find the drum or the brushes until Wanderlust kicks in.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I like that's probably my second favorite segment too. Absolutely. Ed, what about you? I know it's probably hard to pick, but just a
You mean
couple of favorites.
not the whole perfection of the film? No, no. I can like I said, I can
Oh
take off the
boy.
fan glasses too. I love the film, but I can take off the fan glasses to differentiate between favorite and not as favorite. So
Hmm.
All right, favorite. If I had to go kind of a one, two, three order,
Hmm.
and maybe giving a little historical background with the film itself too, as a real
Hmm.
quick aside. But
Sure.
basically, okay, so the warehouse sequence, absolutely my favorite part.
Hmm.
The original idea was to have it as sort of a cable special for an hour instead of an hour and a half movie. Well, Paul thought, it's only a half more hour. Film was a whole other thing altogether. But again, value is not such a bad boy. So bad, again, amazing band. Music being recorded live throughout the entire film is kind of a plus, in my opinion, with the film itself. But just kind of that raw warehouse, Hamburg kind of feeling. They're just jamming together. They're having a great time. You can tell they're having fun. Having giant haystacks in there is kind of a nice plus in between the scenes, kind of a good little, banter back and forth between him and Paul. Certainly second would have to be at the Broad Street station itself. And that's another piece of memorabilia I would love to have. I know, Tom, you and I already kind of discussed this a little bit with the rewatch, but to share this with other folks, him walking around Broad Street, No More Lonely Nights playing, it works very well as an alternate music video, in addition to the actual music video we got from MTV with all the film clips put together. I like kind of that sort of lonely near midnight feeling. He's walking through a very train station that's just about closed, and everything like that, kind of just walking through, thinking to himself, walking through. It's just very great atmosphere to it. And definitely, I would have to say, the third one, I probably would think, rewatching it again, even more recently. Ballroom dancing it does have a lot of fun, a lot of good energy to it, and everything like that. I think in context of the film, for me, and I did have some notes written down, so kind of at this point, you've got different musicians also going into acting. You've got Paul Simon with One Trick Pony back in 1980,
Mm.
or you've got David Bowie jazzing for Blue Jean as a short video with Julian Temple promoting his song from 1984's Tonight.
Yeah, Prince.
Paul, you got Prince, you got Mick Jagger running out of luck in 1985. Issued on VHS though. I think he saw this and said, "No, I don't think I'm going to do it on a movie scale, maybe just video." But yeah, but Prince, and that's the thing, Prince is the outlier as far as commercial success, at least with this particular, time period of movies. So it's kind of interesting in that way how it stands even with movies of a similar time frame. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there as a little bit of discussion as well, and kind of putting it in the context of its time.
No, that's a good point. Absolutely. This was a time when a lot of musicians were going into acting and apparently with Paul, I mean, he, said, in fact, and if you're a Beatle fan subscriber, or if you're thinking about subscribing, I would definitely check out this latest issue because Bill King, the publisher, reprints the latest issue, an interview he did with Paul while he was on the press junket for this film. And he talks about how he, decided to do this film. And he said, he had wanted to do a film. I'm sure many of you know this story before, but that, he'd wanted to do a film for a while, that he had missed the days, he remembered fondly the days of working on Hard Day's Night and Help. In fact, I kind of saw some little perhaps tributes to, or I don't know if you want to say tributes, I don't know, but to Hard Day's Night and Help at different points in the film. I don't know if you guys saw them. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. And decided to do this film but perhaps bit off a bit more than he could chew. And that gets to our next point, which is what could have been done differently with the film. And so, kind of putting our director caps on, which, by the way, the director of the film, this was his first feature film. He'd been a commercial director, but
Figures.
yeah, he'd been a commercial director. You can kind of tell, right? But his first feature film. So, and he had been recommended by, and I can't remember his name now. Uh, you guys can probably think of it. The director, the man who directed Chariots of Fire,
Oh,
recommended him to Paul McCartney, and I can't remember his
hmm.
name now. You guys will come, or people in the comments will remember him.
It'll probably come up in the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But he recommended Webb, so the name of the
Okay.
director.
Yeah.
So anyway, so putting your director's caps on, perhaps, what would you have done differently with this film? Um, so, Tom, I can see you grinning. So,
Well,
how about you?
if I was a director, I'd say, hey, Paul, why don't you go get a co-writer first, rewrite it,
Hmm.
and come back.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a big task, and plus he's the first time doing this on his own. He's not 100% sure he's been wanting to get into films for quite some time, and with projects, whether it was Rupert or sci-fi picks. I mean, um, he was interested in so many different things, but he ended up doing it himself. And I think in the long run, I think that's what initially is one of the biggest faults of this. I what I as much as good as some of them are, I wouldn't have redone songs. I would have just done a lot of new songs. I think the worst part of the film for me is the second half. I am not a fan of the even though I don't think it's he redid it, but I'm not a big fan of the Band on the Run sequence. I'm not a big fan of the Long and Winding Road sequence, and I'm not a big fan of the No More Lonely Nights sequence, even though I love that song. I and
You're
then just
killing
the
it,
ending
Tom. You're killing it.
and just
I know.
the
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
here's the biggest problem I have with the film. Okay, the tapes are stolen. They're worth $5 million. Where's your sense of urgency to find them? There's no sense of urgency. He's just going about his day. We're doing this. We're going to the recording studio. We're going to get interviewed. We're going to go to a warehouse. And there's no sense of urgency whatsoever to find these damn tapes. And we end up finding them on a porch on a bench. And then, oh, look at this door over here. Let me knock it down, and maybe Harry will be in there. That's my biggest problem with the film, and that's what I would have changed. Just to see a little sense of urgency. Again, we all know that this is just a fun little film. I don't think he
Not
tried to
fun.
be doing something serious. I don't think, and he describes it as a fun night out, and I get that. I get that. But if you're gonna watch this film, I just got those issues with it. And again, we all love the most of the music sequences, but the fact is that I just don't think it's, especially the second half is that entertaining. And again, there's no sense of urgency whatsoever to find these tapes. It's just a coincidence that he finds them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lazy way out to end the movie.
Yeah. Okay, Hugh Hudson directed Chariots of Fire. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, I'm going to give you a chance.
Sure. Well,
Respond. I can
well, first of
tell.
all, I was just gonna say, well, again, as Tom and I watched it very recently, so you didn't enjoy that whole sequence of him kicking down the door, the full action sequence, but no, we're kidding. But when we did discuss this, in all fairness, when we did discuss this the other day, and I do see the point when I take off the fan glasses, I take off the jacket, contrary to popular belief, I'm not wearing this all the time. Okay, yeah, I mean, for me, if it were me facing the situation, yes, I'd probably be panicking and all sorts of other things to get through and, try to find the tape. So that, I could definitely respect that from a plot point of view. Again, as much as I love the film, if there was things I was going to redo, I think a little bit for me, if I was going to redo it, a couple casting choices I think would have been interesting as a
Mm.
commercial point of view. Hear me out on this a little bit. Jeffrey Daniels of Shalimar is the breakdancer doing kind of the moonwalking sequence. Give Michael Jackson a speaking part, put him in the film.
Mm.
That's going to get people in the seats if you can afford him at that point, since he's just coming off a Thriller. Give a couple lines to the bad guy. Make the bad guy not Ringo, Mick Jagger. I think that might have been an interesting little twist of casting and kind of have, okay, now you've got somebody, a few lines. It doesn't have to be whole lines of dialogue or a whole couple hours. But I think if I am going to go down that alternate universe road, you're definitely going to have more of the commercial aspect, everything like that. As far as the film itself, I mean, I've learned to appreciate, maybe we're going in a little bit into the sequences that I've come to appreciate more. But Eleanor's Dream, I've come to appreciate more. That might be my least favorite sequence. Tighten that up a bit or cut that, go into something else. Maybe cut that and go, okay, we're going to have some lines between Paul and Michael in this scene. Mick Jagger is a bad guy going, oh, I'm going to take over that bloody company. Whatever it is, something else along those lines might have been an interesting turn. Could he have afforded to do that? Probably not. But if we're going through a wish list,
Yeah. And
probably
then
my alternate version of it.
if I can just add one more thing too, is this, Ringo and Barbara had been together for several years at this point now. I felt no chemistry whatsoever
None.
That was weird. Yeah.
between them in the film.
It's terribly directed,
Yeah.
terribly
Yeah.
and written.
Yep. Yep. Okay, Joe, let's see.
Yeah, I'm
Okay, Joe,
chomping at
you
the
can
bit
jump
myself.
in. Yeah, but
Well,
read on that. I didn't mean to cut you off. Or
No,
were you
no, no.
done?
I'm good. I'm
sorry.
good. No,
Okay.
no. I'm good.
Go ahead.
I'll hide behind the script. No, go ahead.
No,
Go,
no,
go
no,
for it.
no. No need
No,
to
no,
hide.
go for it. Go for it.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting you off.
No, no time to hide now, Ed.
No time. That would make a good song. Give me time to
Yeah.
get on. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what to do differently? Tom said, first of all, get a story here. It's poorly written. There's not a good script, in my opinion. I don't think only my opinion, but there's not much of a story, and the direction is very weak. It could have used a stronger editor. I mean, I'm going to work this into, the negative things about it. Uh, that excruciating, in my opinion, excruciating dream sequence. I hate that. I go out of my mind every time I try to
Well, which
watch this.
one? The whole thing
Which
is a
one?
dream
The whole
sequence.
that whole come on, the thing with their Victorian
Oh, Eleanor's
outfits
Oh,
Dream.
and
Eleanor's Dream.
I mean having
Yeah.
tea and all of this garbage. Yeah, and it goes on. And Paul thinks he hears. What is he? He's walking around in the alley when he hears something. Come on, this is cosplay at its worst. It's just really
Cosplay.
obvious. It's just excruciatingly long. You know, trim it, baby, trim it. And I had a few other things I wanted to say.
Mhm.
First of all, as far as the talked about the poor direction, Barbara Bach was a decent actress. She's not doing anything here. She doesn't have anything to play.
Yeah.
And Ringo was a pretty capable actor when he had good material. There's nothing here. Even I think Ken said he looks like he's just going through the motions
Reading
or
lines.
reading lines.
Yeah.
Tracy Ullman is
Yeah.
better,
She's
but she doesn't have,
great,
still don't have much
but
to
not
do.
here.
But she's and Paul. I've just always felt Paul was the weakest actor in the Beatles, arguably. I thought that George and Ringo were maybe the best two. But John, I don't think John was so great either. But Paul, yeah, I like the way it was described that he's trying hard to be just ordinary or casual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it, I think. Um, Two things what the Tom was talking about. First thing, I agree with you. There's no sense of urgency really. Like what let's do something. But then I started thinking as you guys were talking more that Paul McCartney, if he's playing himself, which I think he's supposed to be playing himself, they don't say, or he's just a rock star.
Yeah,
You
that was
know,
confusing. I
you
kind of
know,
thought the same thing. Was he
because
supposed to be himself or
yeah,
just sort
yeah,
of
I
a generic
definitely
rock
remember
star?
an interview around the time where he says, "Well, it's about you've only played yourself so far in the movies," and he goes, "Well, I'm still playing myself." I remember him
Mhm.
saying once in an interview. So maybe there you go. He's
Mhm.
playing himself. But I was thinking, if it is supposed to be Paul, now play devil's advocate, isn't that what he usually does? Well, no matter what's going on, even when John was murdered, he went to work. Paul always going through with the work, always staying focused, even while things are shattering around him. And
Mm.
maybe there's other people going to try to solve this problem. Look at me trying to make a lot into this when I can't really make anything out of this. But so that's that. I mean, kind of Paul does that. He just keeps
Well,
up with
he
the work.
goes
That's how he
not
deals
not
with
to
it.
correct you or anything, not to say anything about, but he does go to work, but he talks about reminiscing more than actually working that
Ah,
day.
reminiscing.
Mhm.
All right, and one other thing I just want to say, this is just because you had said that the put some new songs in there. don't do this like the familiar songs over again. I thought that's one of the only things the movie arguably has going for it. If you're going to see this movie, somebody on the outside, oh, let's see, oh, Paul's in there. He's going to do Beatles songs. He's going to do Band on the Run, and silly love songs. I think that helps it a little bit to be saved.
Mhm.
Other than I'm talking completely objection, being objective here.
Mhm.
That I'm as a diehard, I'd like any kind of new songs. But
Mhm.
I can understand why, for the general public, it might have been wise to have him doing stuff like Yesterday and For No One and Eleanor Rigby and all of that. That's maybe what the only thing keeping them awake, I would say,
Mhm.
in my
Yeah.
opinion.
For a mainstream fan that doesn't
Yeah.
Mainstream,
Yeah.
mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get
Yeah,
mainstream fans
yeah,
butts in the seats. Yeah.
Well, maybe
yeah.
maybe it's a spiritual sequel too, like you said, Kit, and I thought the same, like a sort of spiritual, successor to Help, or maybe even more so Hard Day's Night, kind of
Yeah.
Days
Mhm.
Mountain 84, a semi
Mhm.
sequel to it, but you don't have all the magical ingredients, obviously, granted.
Right. Yep.
Good
Absolutely.
points.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna follow up that in a second, but I want to hear from Ken. What about you?
Well, I remember an interview that George Harrison gave. I
Mm,
think it was the one for Canadian TV, and where he was saying that
yeah,
the film was okay, but Paul tried to do everything.
right.
He shouldn't have done the screenplay, or he should have shared that with somebody.
Right.
He needed some input from someone who's an expert in that field. And the weakest thing of the movie is the dialogue. There's some clever lines here and there. And it's interesting what you said there, Tom, about there not being chemistry between Ringo and Barbara. I never really thought about that all that much. But you did see Ringo try to impress Barbara, like trying to make moves on her. That I
Mm,
found to be funny. But yeah, you mentioned Tracy Ullman. There's a wasted opportunity.
Yes.
You could have done so much more in this film than the few lines that she had and crying all the time that Harry couldn't have stolen tapes. They could have done so much more with her. I like Brian
mhm,
Brown a lot as an actor. I
Yeah.
thought he did a
yeah.
great job. I don't know if he was supposed to be more like a Brian Epstein, kind of
Mm,
figure. I'm not sure if Paul was thinking that. Um, And what I would have wanted was maybe a little bit more character development. I wasn't
mm,
expecting this to be a Hard Day's Night or Help. The great thing about a Hard Day's Night isn't just the music, but it's introducing the Beatles and their personalities, very distinct personalities that you become glued to and you study, and you love the contrast between the four of them, and they all get a lot of lines in it. This
Mhm.
movie is basically Paul. Ringo has some lines in there. Brian Brown has a bit. There all the other characters have very few lines, so you don't really get to know them all that well. That might have made the movie more interesting. But also one of the things that, to go against what you were saying, Tom, this is a dream within a dream, and in
yeah.
dreams, you're allowed to dream whatever you want to, even if they go on too long, whatever. It gives you an excuse. It gave Paul an excuse to do all this music and do different styles of music with different backgrounds. This was a showcase for Paul to do all these different songs, new and old. I didn't have a problem with him redoing old songs. Maybe he did too many Beatles songs. I would have liked a few more new ones. And as far as the soundtrack is concerned, the highlights have always been, for me, No More Lonely Nights, Not Such a Bad Boy, and No Values, and even Goodnight Princess, which I love a lot. Um, and I've grown to really love the Beatle remakes too, although Good Day Sunshine, there's not much to it. There's nothing really special about his version of that. I like when the arrangements are somewhat different, like what he did with For No One, doing that on acoustic guitar instead of on piano. Um,
Mm,
but Good Day Sunshine, instead of having the Beatles harmonies, you got Paul harmonizing with himself, and it's not nearly as interesting. Um, but for me, one of the worst moments was how the whole dream ends with finding Harry in the building, which he thought was a bathroom.
mhm.
I mean, what a stupid way to end the whole storyline.
What I thought. I'm like, that's it. That's it.
That's you were kind of hoping maybe some of these other characters, one of them might have taken the master tape or something for some reason or another. But I was relieved that Harry wasn't stealing it. But
Mm.
for it to end with that and Paul to and why was Harry in that building in the first place and not have the tape with him? Just leave
So he
it
thought
right
it was, yeah.
there.
Yeah,
He
just
he
leave
said
it
he
on a
thought it was
bench.
the bathroom. Yeah, he said he thought it was a bathroom, but then you don't leave the tapes that are supposedly worth, so much money
On a bench.
just on the bench unattended.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh well.
yeah.
You know,
So many questions.
I defend this movie only because it's the same thing about Magical Mystery Tour. A lot of people thought that was a big mistake for the Beatles to make that film, but it's a great film for all the different videos for the different songs. As Paul has always said, it's the only way you're going to see us doing I Am the Walrus. You
Yeah.
know, Beatle movies, Help on a Hard Day's Night had a thin plot all along, but they had interesting characters.
Mhm.
Mm,
Four Beatles alone were
Mhm.
interesting characters, let alone all the people that surrounded them in those
Mhm.
movies. That wasn't the case with Broad Street.
Yeah.
But for the music alone, it's certainly worth it
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, that's the reason I watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the music.
Yeah. The
yeah,
music.
agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
and before we start wrapping up the discussion, I just want to mention, as I watched it again, I was just amazed, noticing, wow, there are definitely like he put in some similarities, some callbacks to Hard Day's Night and all, like that scene in the cafeteria
Mm.
where they're sitting in amongst he and I think Tracy Ullman and I think that's who's in it and all the people are sitting down in the crazy costumes uh,
Oh,
and I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, that's right out of Hard Day's Night, isn't it? I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah, I
Sort
mean,
of.
so is the whole, Ringo fumbling for the brushes too is kind of reminiscent to his scene with getting ready to, was it If I Fell?
yeah,
It's just almost kind of the opposite though, where he's not ready to do,
yeah,
and
and
so
some of his staff, like the guy that's always blowing his nose and everything. I mean, it's kind of goofy, a
yeah,
little bit Norman shaky, and I mean,
right,
it's just kind of interesting. There's some little bits in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
It's like,
that's true.
oh,
All the characters, like in A Hard Day's Night, like Ken was saying,
hmm
besides the Beatles themselves, are intriguing and are well drawn. You got the
hmm
manager Norm, you got Shake, the assistant,
right,
you got Paul's grandfather, the
yep.
Victor
right,
Spinetti as the neurotic TV director. And these are all good characters, and identified and sharply drawn individually, different
hmm
and interacting all together. So you got good writing.
hmm Yeah, I mean, there was some promise, different thing, and I agree with what you were saying about Tracy Ullman. Boy, was she wasted in this because she is so good, and
Yeah.
and all she does is very much is just sit and cry, and it's
Yeah.
like, come on. I mean, this is. I mean, you could use her in a much more effective way.
Hmm.
right. But I do think it is important that he is surrounded by talented actors, right? As
Yeah,
we talked about, Tracy Allman is very talented. Sir Ralph is very talented. Was Brown the what was the guy?
Brian
Byron
Brown.
Brown.
Brian
Brown,
Brian
Brown.
yeah,
Brown,
very, very. I mean, he's got a very good filmography.
absolutely.
Um, so he is surrounded by talent, which is a good thing, but in a way, they're also kind of wasted a little bit.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Maybe have less songs and a little bit more dialogue to make all the
hmm
people around him more interesting.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
and definitely trim some of the segments, either cut them out or trim them way back. I mean, definitely like Eleanor's Dream and
Love
that kind
Eleanor.
of thing. And some of that, yeah, went on way too long. Sorry, Ed, way too long for me.
It's that sequence, again, I don't disagree with trimming it, or,
Mhm.
again, sometimes even if I want to watch just a segment from the film, I'm
Yeah,
watching that.
Mm.
yep, absolutely.
But
So,
I
oh,
find
go.
that interesting, though, Eleanor's Dream, because of the music itself,
Mhm.
because
Right.
it's really gorgeous.
There's some nice bits in there.
Yeah, just for the record, for the record,
Mhm.
I enjoy listening to it on the record.
Yeah,
but I don't like. I can't stand watching it.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
why.
Hmm.
So to round out the discussion, let's talk about its legacy. What do you think? What impact do you think it had, if any, on Paul's legacy as an artist? We know that it did put him in a little bit of a creative slump after time. I mean, we know, this was a box office and critical disappointment.
Hmm.
He did rebound a bit with Spies Like Us in 86,
85.
85,
85.
85,
85.
85. He did have a hit there, but you know, it was tough going for a little while until 89. And so,
That's what I always say, and I always get grief when I say it. But I agree, Kit.
so what effect and do you think that, because even now he acknowledged the anniversary on
Yes.
social media of the album,
Yeah.
but not the film,
Uh,
and
No,
it took him a
I think
while
he
to
did
even mention
say,
the album.
yeah, yeah,
Well, he's mentioned, well, I don't mean it, but he has mentioned a little bit of the film in the lyrics book.
Hmm.
Um, I think, yeah, 84 to 89 was kind of a suffer period after, you get the top 10 hit from the soundtrack, No More Lonely Nights, a favorite song. Everybody knows that, no secret with me on that one. But also, I mean, even looking at a little bit of the film career, like Keith Madman's book, I was looking through this as I was, preparing for this today.
Hmm.
Page 351 for all the nerds out there, myself included. The 1985 entry, there was an offer for him to do 8 episodes of Dallas. Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
For about £1 million. His reasoning at the time supposedly was, well, I didn't want to spend time away from my family. The next film that he's actually in is Eat the Rich, which is just a cameo from 1987. We don't see as much of him outside of concert films until Pirates of the Caribbean in 2017, and that's just a cameo as well. So he hasn't really carried a film outside of a concert film or a music video since this time period, since this film came out in 1984.
Good point.
mhm.
As far as maybe the more musical part, I often wonder, okay, so what if Broad Street, let's say it had been a commercial success? Does he feel the need to, does he, well, yeah, I guess Tom, you brought up the good point, does he go out and tour with Chris Spedding and other folks, and kind of bringing that out on the road, which would have been an interesting alternate timeline.
Hmm.
Spies Like Us, it was still a top 10 hit, so it hadn't quite hit, but then pressed to play commercially, it seemed to have kind of had a little after effect, kind of rippling down a little bit. And again, get up to the '89 tour, sort of a commercial comeback. So just kind of interesting to see how much of an impact this really did have sales wise, diminishing returns, that type of thing. Again, I love the film. I will see it. I will see it again this week. But as much as I love it,
You're
acknowledge
a brave
that,
man.
yeah, wow.
or crazy. I don't know which, Tom, but maybe a little bit of
Mhm.
both. But that's just kind of, I guess that's kind of my input on it. But I just
Mhm.
wanted to, definitely hear obviously other folks
Yeah.
too.
No, that's true. No, those are excellent points. Excellent points. So, Mr. Two Legs, what's your take on this?
Well, let's be honest. The film, okay, I think it was a dent in the armor of the career of Paul McCartney. It's unfortunately all we can go by is facts, right? I mean, at $9 million film, it I think it was lucky it got $2 million back in a worldwide market, and it wasn't a success. And he hasn't talked about it much, but the success came with the soundtrack. I mean, the soundtrack was praised by Roger Ebert. It was #1 in the UK, right? It unfortunately it didn't do as well as an album as a whole here in the States, but the single, right, is still top 10. So it's just more or less the film that I think where the stain was laid. But other than that, I mean, the legacy of it is okay. Let's see 10 years from now, and I know I have to keep saying this because I'm gonna say this. I want to be wrong when I say this, but if the archives are done and he's only doing these half-speed masters during the anniversaries. We're going to have to wait 10 years for this to finally get re-released, soundtrack wise, and for the half-speed master. And if the film gets released, hopefully we will get it, a release on Blu-ray or whatnot with a restoration, and hopefully that'll happen. But I'm thinking the way he's going now, it's just with these 50th anniversaries, where he's celebrating this stuff. We'll see.
Mhm.
Um, should we get an archive release of this? Absolutely, we should get an
Yeah.
archive release of everything.
Yeah.
But the trend is now saying that he's doing 50th anniversaries here. So I'm wondering if we have to wait another 10 years to see if he's actually going to acknowledge the film and say, okay, here it is in a new restored Blu-ray, and then hopefully physical media will still be a thing in 10 years.
All right. Watch the space in
I'll be
20
first in line.
2034.
I'll be there
Yeah,
in line with my jacket and everything. But
All right.
yeah,
Excellent. Excellent. Ken.
Well, I think that Paul is someone that's very affected by sales.
yes.
And like you said, Edward, he never did another acting role carrying an entire film ever again after this. I think if this film had done really well, he would have done more. He just his actions reflect, the success or lack of success of what he's done before. And I think that it probably really shocked him that it did this poorly. And he wanted to make sure after that that he made a very wise decision to really help his career along, especially his recording career. Even though, like we said, No More Lonely Nights was a top 10 hit here, Spies Like Us was a top 10 hit. But it was also a time of change for him because the three albums that he made with George Martin, he was relying on an old friend who's trustworthy, worked so well in the Beatles with him. And later on, like in Live and Let Die, he had to move on with somebody else as a producer. So he was looking for other names and he wanted to sound contemporary, which is what he tried to do with Press to Play. And a lot of people didn't like the sound of Press to Play and the production of it and whatever, whether you consider it the songs or the production. I think he really tried very hard with Press to Play. And since that didn't do as well as he hoped, then he tried something else. Different producers on Flowers in the Dirt, writing with Elvis Costello. He was always trying to, you know, pick up his career again so that his sales would do well. And I just think that this is how Paul kind of reacts. I think these days he's more about recording just to please himself. I don't think he cares as much about the record sales.
Yeah.
I think he'd like for his albums to do well, but it's not the be all and end all. He loves going out and performing and doing the tours that he does, and that's what makes him happy. I think in his own mind these days, he's done so much to prove himself. Everything he's doing now is for the sheer enjoyment of it. But for a good part of his career, he was very concerned about sales and watching the sales. And it's to the point where, a lot of people point to how he would diss Back to the Egg, an album like that, which actually made the top 10 in the United States. But for someone like Paul, who's used to number ones and number twos, that's a disappointment. Why he doesn't ever go back and do anything from Press to Play on tour or anything like that. Anything that didn't do well, he kind of ignores or rarely ever says anything about.
Yeah.
So I think that the lack of success of this movie did have an effect on him then. And by the way, we haven't even talked about Rupert the Bear.
Well,
I think that was a brilliant animated film. And
mhm.
it's a shame that the full-length feature film was never finished. But the mere fact that Paul continued to do animated and it was well received, although a lot of people mocked the song, it was still a huge hit in the US. But then he continued to do other animated films like Tropic Island Home,
Tuesday.
and now he's working on, well, now it's been 10 years, High in the Clouds. Um, but there you see, he got a really good reaction critically from Rupert the Bear, and he continued to work on animation and animated films. So, he has been severely affected by how well his music or his films do.
Yeah, and he got beat up by critics on this too, so I'm
Oh,
sure he was
sure.
very much affected by.
Oh, big time. Big time. Joe.
Well, what can I add? I will say that I see it a little differently with something Ken said about Paul not really having too much of as much of an interest, however I word this, of sales these days and things anymore. I see it the opposite way. It seems like he's cared just as much as he ever has, beginning with say new and so forth, trying hard to get a number one. Not that I fault him for that, or get a lot of sales.
Mm,
He's put a lot of publicity out there. I think he still wants it as much as ever. I think he was thrilled to get a big hit with Egypt Station. But I also think I'm in the crowd that believes that's why all these multiple versions came out, because that's what he's trying to do. Or he and slash or the record company, is whatever. I really believe that. So that's how I feel about today. But as
mm,
far as back then, yeah, I'm in the camp that believes, well, the movie didn't do well, of course, and Paul was very, I think, shocked by it, surprised. I don't think he expected it to do that poorly, as we say. And I always liked the fact that he tried to do that, because Paul tries to do it all.
mm,
Whether it be classical music, take it, dabble in this, dabble in that.
right.
And I love that he said, "Well, I'm going to do a movie. Let's try a movie, maybe write it." And I think that that's honorable. It's a pity that it didn't go well. And then I think that Press to Play wasn't that well received, and I think he had a double whammy there, as far as not being accepted with the movie, and then the album Press to Play not doing as well. And I'm in the camp that believes, even though he always kept active and kept on working, of course, and always keeping moving and doing like the Russian album and
Mhm.
this and that. Still, I think it wasn't until he started touring again and had a modest success with Flowers in the Dirt that he was really like back. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with an artist. They all have a moment, whether it's a couple of years, 5 years, or whatever, where maybe they just lose it a little bit. And I'm talking about strictly in terms of the commercial success and acceptance that
Mhm.
you're used to, not the actual work, not the talent
Right.
lacking, just that acceptance thing where, okay, so you have a little bit of a dip with that for now, and he came back. You know,
Mhm.
come back. Some people, they think that's kind of harsh. There's no comeback. I think of Flowers in the Dirt and the tour as kind of a comeback.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Well,
I yeah. I think that's nicely put, because I that's kind of how I feel about the film. That yeah, I mean it obviously, I mean there are big fans of it, obviously. There's some that didn't like it as well. And and it wasn't a commercial or critical success, but and for a few years he was sort of trying to find his sound, but he was experimenting with different sounds, but that's okay, because that's what I also like about Elvis Costello. I mean, he's, tried so many different genres, and if it didn't work, so what? I mean, not everything works equally well. And but you got to give him credit for trying different
Yeah,
genres or
yeah,
different media,
yeah,
media. I mean, it's, and it certainly didn't end Paul's career, did it?
no.
I mean, it most certainly did not.
And
Uh,
I admire him for that's one of the things I admire for about him,
mhm.
constantly trying different things, trying to always dabble in different genres or styles, things like that.
Yep,
That's Paul.
exactly. Yeah, and I think it does deserve. We kind of referred, alluded to this earlier. I think it does deserve to have DVD, Blu-ray, re-release. I
Yeah.
mean, it's part of his catalog. It's part of his history. It
yeah.
absolutely deserves to have it.
But who would own that now? It was 20th Century Fox. Or was it Disney has this? Who would have this?
I don't know.
I think Disney had bought 20th Century Fox. So
Right.
if it's 20th Century Fox ownership, because I do think, even though Paul dropped the 9 million, I do think 20th Century Fox what's the word I'm looking for?
Finance the
Gave
film.
him,
Yeah.
yeah. So it is, I think, he has said in interviews that it is a 20th Century Fox production. So then it has to be them, which now Disney owns, and we know Disney is very stingy when it comes to releasing physical media these days. Although they have signed a deal with I think it was Sony, I can't remember, to release more movies on physical media. So who knows?
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
know, I know, Joe, you made your point and very well put about the comeback in 1989,
Yeah, I
but
was being careful.
no, it's just all of us, all music is subjective, and you
Right.
know that I've always defended press to play, and I think that that particular period with press to play, the Phil Ramone stuff that he was working on, you trying to find the right producer, but still, I think it was one of the most creative periods of Paul's career, regardless of how well it was received.
Mhm.
So, from a
Mhm.
creative standpoint, I don't think of Flowers in the Dirt as the comeback. I think he never stopped being creative.
Well, I said it's not about the work or or the talent or the creativity. It's about the success of it,
Sales.
the
Right.
acceptance of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's used to all that those constant accolades his whole life,
It
pretty
was
much.
a
Mhm.
Except,
it was a comeback in the sense of credibility. I think,
Mhm.
and I think that's how I think. In my opinion, maybe the better way to say it. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
comeback in credibility, or in, because I mean, we look at it. What I mean, it still didn't sell as well. I mean, it went to number one in the UK, but Flowers didn't.
Yeah. Weirdly.
Still,
Only went to 21 here.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
weird.
So
yeah,
was it really a comeback? You know,
well, and it's a shame, like we said, that Paul tends to go by what the majority thinks or what the general reputation is. Like he doesn't really talk
right?
much about Back to the Egg, doesn't really want to talk Broad Street, doesn't want to really talk too much about
Mhm.
Press to Play.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
because he does listen to a lot of that, which is I
Yeah.
wish he didn't. But
Yeah.
with McCartney too, though, we got he went back and revisited McCartney too, which was interesting. You
Mhm.
know, and
Yeah. That's
I
true.
think
I
It
that's
mean,
done,
was.
got a better reputation these days too.
yeah.
That could be part of it.
That's probably part of it.
And that's the thing is we know during all these archive releases, the stuff that people will consider, not his best, have all been reevaluated very favorably,
Yeah,
as these
Yeah.
That
releases have
right.
been coming out. Maybe the same could be said for Broad Street. Who knows? But
Yeah.
again, it's we'll have to wait and see.
That's
or
right.
even Press to Play with the those other
Yeah,
tracks on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. It's.
yeah.
But I think
You have
also,
no idea what people will be saying 10 years from now or 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Right,
That's right. Right. Yeah.
right.
it deserves an archive release. And you know what? Even I'll say this as a sort of defender of the film. If anybody out there who hasn't seen it or whatever, make up your own mind, make up your own judgment. Maybe it's not
Yep.
the worst thing as a critic back in 1984 might have said. Much as I respect Roger Ebert, I do respect him even if I disagree with him, right?
Mhm.
But and I mean, he's done a lot. Well, did a lot of great writing, everything like that. But putting all that aside, maybe it's not as bad as you think it is. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Maybe it's somewhere in between.
Yep.
Maybe you won't. But like with a lot of Paul's work, approach it with an open mind. I think that's
Mhm.
the reason for me touting this as well. And it is an enjoyable film when I come down to the basics of it.
Absolutely. That is a great note to end on. Go see it yourself. It is on YouTube. You can also watch the latest Two Legs where Tom and Andy and Ed do kind of a watching party, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So check that out as well. It's really fun. So well, this has been a wonderful show. What a jam-packed show. My brain is just full of information. I don't know about you guys, but with great
Mm.
analysis and news, and I mean, this has been just a wonderful, wonderful night. We could just keep on going, but I know everybody's got jobs to get to so tomorrow. So
Yeah,
I
me
know
too.
boxing. I know Boxing Day is getting close there, Queen.
that's
But
right.
we gotta wrap. We gotta wrap this up.
That's right.
Well, we
We'll
were going to wrap it up
just
on,
thank you.
but
Thank you,
unfortunately,
everybody.
but
Well, thank you
Ed,
for being here.
oh, Ed, thank
Yeah.
you for
Thank
being
you
here.
again.
You are the expert on this film, and we can't thank you enough for being here. And we also, of course, thank Dylan for cluing us into the upcoming Ringo album. I mean, this is just going to be great, and so we're going to go around and let everybody know what we're up to. We'll make this brief because I know we're getting a little late here. So I'm not going to go through all the where you can find us because it's actually right in the description in this video. So, but you can find us at all the usual places here, Facebook, Twitter. You can also email us if you want to let us know any feedback, any topics that you would, think like us to consider covering. And as far as I go, more Toppermost the Poppermost episodes are coming up soon. The October 1964 episodes, I think, are coming out this week. So just check it out at toppermostthepoppermost.net. And also, don't forget, you can sign up for my next class, which is called Bring Into Funk, which is part two, the history of funk. And I will put that link up on our Facebook page and on my Facebook page. So please check that out. Please sign up. It'll be a great class. So Ed, since you're our guest, let everybody know what you're up to.
I'll keep it quick, sure. Well, today, as of today, the 28th, I dropped a new video in celebration of Broad Street, a nice Broad Street related autograph. If you want to see it, please go to my channel. It's a very special autograph. You'll get to see the 5 or 6 minutes I put into it that I got from Tracks UK. Next episode during this next weekend, as I'm going to do, there is not a press kit, but something I got for television spots from someone in LA. So it kind of goes into that. So I think I've covered the whole life cycle of the film. Other than that, anybody who knows me in the real world, I'm going to Comic-Con next weekend in Rhode Island. So I'll be enjoying that. Unfortunately, I can't make it to Harry Fest. Steve told me about it, but Comic-Con in Providence has taken me there. But I'll be there if I happen to bump into anybody. So that's pretty much it.
Very cool. Sounds like you are busy, busy, busy. Joe.
Okay, my YouTube channel is called Mean Mr. Mayo. And I just dropped the video today, which was kind of a response to my friend Beatly Tone's video. He did a video talking about Ringo. I think he called it like we have to talk about Ringo or something to that effect. And he started talking about his back catalog and stuff. And I decided this needed a response. So I did kind of a response video, basically called something like, I don't remember it exactly. Yes, let's talk about Ringo. We must, something like that. And basically talking again about his general solo career and how the question was put: do fans buy Ringo because they have to be loyal, they're loyalists, or do they buy Ringo because they like it or whatever? And this is not just Beatly Tone, by the way. I'm not getting on him, but he inspired me. And when he inspired me, I started thinking about all the other people that usually come down on Ringo in this regard. So that's a new video that I have on my channel. I'd appreciate it if you watched it. Also, I have my movie channel, Mr. Cinemeo, and maybe Tom and I will do the movie show. We do a talk show. How does it look in this possible week, Tom?
This Thursday looks good, buddy.
Except Thursday's Halloween, and we
It's
probably won't be doing any
yeah.
Halloween movies. But if you want to watch my channel, Mr. Cinemeo, and if you're into like those kinds of movies, for the month of October, I've been putting a good amount of horror-related movies that I've never seen before. These are like first-time views over at Mr. Cinemeo, and that's me.
Sounds good. Tom.
All right. Well, try to get to this quickly. We just dropped the episode with our good pal Ed over here, where we watched the whole video, and I'm sorry, not the whole video, but the whole movie. No, give my regards to Broad Street. Had a lot of fun with that. It was a good time. And maybe this film is better with friends. And maybe a few drinks as well. But but so that was a great time. Thank you, Ed, for joining us for that. And I know we had
Thank you,
that
guys.
planned for a while. Yeah, that was a good time. Last week, the week prior, we tried to keep our show positive, but we felt maybe it was time that where we discuss 10 of our least favorite McCartney songs. Look, I don't think anybody's catalog, maybe the Beatles, but anybody's catalog is perfect, right? And I don't think Paul is an exception. So we did talk about 10 of our least favorite McCartney songs, and that was a good time as well.
Did you, question me, did
And
you call them least favorite, Tom, or would you
No, it
say
wasn't.
worst?
what's that?
Did you say worst, least favorite, or worst?
Well, I tried not to say this. I tried not to say this, the word worst. I tried not to say worst, but I
No, I
maybe,
know.
and I tried not to say hate, but
I'm just
but those
just
two
trying
words
to
may have
stir it up a
popped
little
out.
bit. That's all.
Yeah, well, you're doing good there, buddy. You're
I
doing
think
good.
it was put in the
Um,
title of your video, worst.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to try to keep it least favorite, but Andy does the posting, so
Oh, sure. Blame
it
it on
was
Andy.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. Listen, but anyways, we're also doing live shows on our own. Andy's usually does one on Sunday, and I try to do one during midweek. And now we're also starting to bring guests up, and Andy started this past Sunday. He brought up our own Ken Michaels. So thank you, Ken, for joining Andy. Fantastic conversation. Beatley Tone came up as well, so that was good. I'm going to be live Wednesday, and I'm going to be having this person real quick here on the show. It was a book, and I didn't want to, but
I know what
somebody
it was.
that wrote this book over here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we're he agreed to come on. We're gonna have talk some fun topics, and then in the future, hopefully Joe and Kit and Ed will join us for live conversations as well. This is just kind of like it could be anything, whether it's Beatles, George, because we do talk a lot of Paul, so we are trying to break it up a little bit and have other topics as well. So that's Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. Please check us out on our YouTube channel, and we are all over the audio platforms as well. And as soon as we get done with this, I can't wait to watch Ken's latest video, which he's going to talk about here in a minute.
Now.
Take it away.
I
Yeah,
was just going to say
now.
that, Joe. Yeah, I can't wait to tell all of you about this because something I've been wanting to do since last December when Denny Lane passed away was to do a tribute show for Denny. And between this podcast and things we said today, somehow we never got around to doing it. So I did it on my own YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, and I invited Denny Sywell and Lawrence Juber and Steve Holly. And for about an hour and a half, we just talk about Denny Lane and their time in Wings with him, what it was like working with him in the studio, whether he preferred being in the studio or performing live, the relationship with Paul, what did Denny think of his songwriting, all that kind of stuff. And it was such an honor and a thrill for me. I've interviewed all three of them at various times, but to have them all together, and it just so happens that tomorrow, Denny would have turned 80.
Oh,
It's
wow.
actually his birthday tomorrow. And I'm very lucky that I was able to get these three people and to time it like this. I actually didn't realize it was his birthday coming up. But once I did know that, I tried to get the three of them and I was able to do it right before doing the show today. And it's already up on my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, a Denny Lane tribute. So happy birthday, Denny, tomorrow on the 29th. Also, I did an interview with Wayne and Rachel Cabral. They are the organizers for Harry Fest, which,
Oh,
as I said, is this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday. I'll be there on the Saturday, and it's at White's in Westport, Massachusetts. Lots of fun, lots of performances, local talent doing George songs, Beatles, all kinds of stuff, Beatles related, sometimes monkeys, you never know. And it's all done for charity, the money that's raised. I know it's going to a hospice, a local one there in Massachusetts. So, yeah. And another thing, on things we said today, we just did a show on the 50th anniversary for Walls and Bridges, and we had Chip Mattinger on. Perfect guest to have on with all the work he's done on John with the Lennonology that he's worked on. And so he was fantastic to have on the program. On my website, I'm going to be doing a contest that's going to start either Thursday or Friday I have a pair of tickets to give away to see It Was 50 Years Ago Today. This is the tour that's going on right now with Christopher Cross and Joey Molland and Maxi Priest, David Pack, who was formerly from Ambrosia, and Jason Sheff, who used to be in Chicago. He was the replacement for Peter Cetera.
Peter
And
Cetera.
they
Yeah.
do Let It Be, the Let It Be album, and the Hey Jude album, and also half the concert are their own hits. And they're performing at the Ridgefield Playhouse in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and that's on November the 13th. So go to my website. There is a page for ticket giveaways, and it'll explain it's going to be so simple to win a pair of tickets for that show. And if you want to find out more about this tour, because this goes on almost every single year, Joey Molland was in the last one, so is Christopher Cross. You can go to this website. It was 50yearsagotoday.com. 50 is the number 50. By the way, I wanted to say one more thing about Denny Lane. Steve Holly is on this brand new recording from a band called McDonald's Farm, and they cover Time to Hide on this recording, which is being released tomorrow on Denny Lane's birthday. And I understand that MPL has a lot to do with this. It's being released on CD. The money from this is going to go to Denny's widow and Denny's children. And they actually took Denny's harmonica playing. Steve wasn't sure when he talked about this, whether it was from Wings at the Speed of Sound, that version, the studio version, or a live version, maybe Wings Over America. But that way, Denny's on the recording. And that's going to be coming out tomorrow. So as soon as I hear it, you could actually hear an excerpt of it on YouTube. It's only about 30 seconds of it. So, yeah, special tribute for Denny with Time to Hide coming out tomorrow. So if you can, please, by all means, subscribe to all these channels of mine. Every Little Thing, don't forget you can listen to my radio show, Every Little Thing, by going to WFDU's website, WFDU.FM. Go to the archival pages, type in the words Every Little Thing. They have the last two shows that they ran on the radio station, and they each run for 2 weeks. So thanks so much to all of you for following all these different shows that I've been doing. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you to everybody out there who tuned in tonight and who's watching the replay and so forth. We can't do this show without you. So, for Dylan Sevey, Ed Crawford, Joe Mayo, Ken Michaels, Tom Hunyadi, this is Kid O'Toole saying, I know. There will be no more lonely nights, so don't be such a bad boy with no values. Good night, Princess.